Reborn into this life, I carefully avoided every possible encounter with Su Jinyan. When he got transferred to the Southern Military District, I applied to Northwestern University instead. I secretly retrieved the marriage application he'd already filed. While he bought our would-be marital home down south, I settled permanently in the north. All of this because, in their past life, his unattainable love remained unmarried her entire life for his sake, racked with guilt. He secretly adopted a child with her. In their twilight years, even the child we shared was moved by their epic love story and became part of their family. I finally breathed a sigh of relief after retrieving the marriage application. No one knew I'd been reborn. At the last moment before submission, I rushed over and retrieved the form by claiming there were errors in the family information. The registrar looked puzzled. You submitted the application this morning and now want it back this afternoon. Having second thoughts, not wanting complications, I shook my head. Just some incorrect details. We'll fix them and resubmit. The secretary finally relaxed and told me to revise it quickly before submitting it to him. I nodded, then immediately tossed the marriage application into the trash after stepping out. In this lifetime, Su Jinyan and I will never get married, too, in my past life. Though Su Jinyan filed the marriage paperwork, his attitude toward me grew increasingly distant. I thought that was just his personality, so I didn't dwell on it. Little did I know, it wasn't until my twilight years that I discovered Chenyi had been his lifelong unattainable love. She remained unmarried her entire life for his sake. Finally, when Su Jinyan turned 40, he was moved by Chenyi's devotion and they adopted a daughter together. Eventually even my own son was moved by their pure love. He secretly associated with them behind my back. If he hadn't slipped up at my deathbed, saying now Dad and Aunt Chen can finally be together, I'd have remained in the dark till the end. Only then did I realize, my whole life had been nothing but a joke. So Su Jinyan's aloofness, every single one of his transfers, they all had their reasons, none other than Chenyi. Each transfer took him to the opposite ends of the earth from me. Though I was his lawfully wedded wife for 60 years, the time we truly spent together likely didn't even add up to a year. He wasn't there when I nearly died giving birth to our child. When our child fell ill at midnight, I carried them through the pouring rain for 3 hours before finding a doctor. He was absent even when both our parents fell ill and passed away, yet wherever he went, Chenyi would follow. Chenyi started as just an ordinary nurse, but later became his personal physician. He felt indebted to Chenyi for her devoted love and silent companionship. He tacitly agreed to adopt a child with Chenyi, and allowed the child to call him father. Even my own son wishes for my early death, just to let these star-crossed lovers be together. Returning home, I gazed at the aged house with mixed emotions. In my past life, Su Jinyan and I got married right here 1 month later. After our wedding, Su was transferred to the Southern Military District, though I wanted to follow. He persuaded me to stay, citing the harsh living conditions there, and so I ended up living here for 30 years. Little did I know, within half a year of Su Jinyan's transfer to the Southern Military District, that girl Chenyi had followed him there. From then on, they became inseparable, their fates intertwined for a lifetime. The irony was, I'd been worried about Su Jinyan being alone without care, wanting to accompany him myself, yet he rejected me every single time. All refusals sound the same. Parents and children should never be left unattended, and so it was. He found companionship with a confidant outside, while my entire life became confined within these 4 walls because of him. Returning home, Su Jinyan still hadn't come back. The moment I got home, I found my admission letter buried at the bottom of my bedroom drawer. In my past life, right after our marriage, Su Jinyan got transferred to the Southern Military District. And then my mother-in-law fainted without reason a month later. On top of that, I was pregnant at the time, so I gave up the chance to study in the Northwest. This remained my lifelong regret from that previous existence. Rubbing the admission letter between my fingers, I nearly wept seeing my name stamped with the university's crimson seal. I remember in that past life, when I was on my deathbed, Chenyi came to see me with our son. Sensing my impending death, Chenyi started visiting me daily. But in private, her kindly mask would slip, her words cutting straight to my heart. What does it matter that you stole the title of wife? I'm the one who's been by Nian's side all these years. You're just Nian's breeding tool and a free caretaker for his parents. I should thank you for bearing such a fine son for me. Chenyi kept rambling on. The cruelest part, I didn't even have the strength left to curse her. To make it worse, I had to watch my own son treat her like his real mother. Their sickeningly sweet mother-son act playing out before me every single day. Even as I drew my last breath, my son finally felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Someone muttered, Aunt Chen is finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I shook my head and carefully tucked away the admission letter. What's gone is gone. 5. The man dragged himself home, utterly exhausted, just as dinner was being prepared, seeing him drenched. It suddenly dawned on me, that day in my past life. Knowing Su Jinyan had submitted our marriage application, I joyfully bought groceries to prepare a celebration feast for his return, but I waited and waited. He didn't come home until very late. When he finally returned, he was soaked to the skin. I was really worried and asked him what happened, but Su Jinyan just remained silent, saying nothing. Later I found out that Chen Yi had somehow fallen into the river that same day. It was Su Jinyan who saved her, I scoffed, considering past events. It's obvious Chen Yi must have been heartbroken upon learning Su Jinyan submitted their marriage application today. Either she was utterly disillusioned, or she resorted to desperate measures. This explains why Su Jinyan was so distant with me that day in our previous life. He probably blamed me for Chen Yi's river jumping incident. Yet, what have I done to deserve this? He was the one who proposed marriage. He submitted the neatly tied report. And he's the same man who vowed to cherish me forever. In the end, I seem to have become the one who tore the lovers apart. When I saw Su Jinyan return soaking wet again, I simply averted my gaze. Unlike my past life where I'd fuss over boiling water for him, I calmly continued stir-frying my dish, with no hot water for a bath. Su Jinyan could only quietly change out of his damp clothes. During dinner, he started sneezing. I pretended not to hear. After dinner, while washing dishes in the kitchen, I saw Su Jinyan pacing restlessly in the living room. Finally, unable to contain himself, he grabbed his coat and muttered, "I'm stepping out." Then he hurried out the door. Pressing my lips together, I solemnly drew a single stroke on the yellowed old poster hanging on the wall. Just 2 more tally marks, and I can leave this place. 6. Su Jinyan didn't return until nearly dawn. I heard his deliberately softened footsteps from the other room but pretended not to notice. The next morning, assuming Su Jinyan had already left for work, I was about to buy train tickets when coughing sounds came from his room. My hand froze mid-bite as I pretended not to hear. After dinner, I decided to go out and buy a train ticket. Train tickets were hard to come by this time of year. Just lining up would take ages. But this ticket meant everything to me. I needed to secure it early to set my mind at ease. I was about to leave when I heard a knock at the door. Puzzled, I opened the door to find a pale-faced young Chen Yi standing outside. She looked gaunt with thinning hair and a sickly sallow complexion, so frail it seemed a breeze could knock her over. In my past life, I'd only ever seen her as an old woman. I remember lying in the hospital bed while she stood there with her jet black hair perfectly coiffed. Wearing designer clothes and carrying a luxury handbag, there she sat elegantly by my bedside in her cashmere shawl, a pampered woman worlds apart from my exhausted, white-haired self who'd toiled all my life. Chen Yi couldn't bring herself to look at me. She just shot me a fleeting sideways glance before murmuring nervously with lowered eyes, I'm looking for Brother Su. The way she's carrying on, anyone would think there's something going on between her and Su Jinyan, but right now, I don't have time for her little performance. I left the door open. Then I stepped past her and went downstairs. I grabbed the money and headed out on my bike, relying on memory and asking several people along the way. I finally reached the train station close to 10 o'clock. During the holiday season, the train station was bustling with crowds, and ticket queues stretched long. I picked a relatively shorter line, waiting until nearly noon when staff were about to go off duty before my turn finally came. When my turn came, all the seats to my destination were already sold out. Without hesitation, I paid for an earlier standing ticket. After securing the ticket, I carefully tucked it close to my body before cycling back. Returning home, I'd half expected to find star-crossed lovers pouring their hearts out to each other. The moment I opened the door, I found Su Jinyan sitting in the living room. His bedroom door conspicuously left wide open as if on purpose. Seeing me return, Su Jinyan parted his lips as if to speak, but I turned away and headed straight to the kitchen. Might as well make lunch since I'm feeling a bit peckish. During lunch, I noticed Su Jinyan seemed to be struggling to explain himself, but since I remained silent, he eventually swallowed his words. Finally, he couldn't help but look up at me. "Yuehua, just now, pushing rice around my bowl," I said flatly. "Don't talk during meals." Su Jinyan choked back his words. I sneered inwardly. Back when we were together, I was usually the one doing all the chattering, but often, he'd just respond indifferently to the topics I deliberately brought up, showing little reaction, or he'd simply say, "Don't talk during meals." I used to feel ashamed, thinking I lacked proper manners. It wasn't until later that I realized the wrong person. Whatever you say would be wrong from the start. 10. I couldn't care less about what Su Jinyan meant to say. After dinner, I retreated to my room. The room was filled with crimson paper cuttings, window decorations, and red quilt covers I'd gradually collected after getting engaged. I gathered all these items together until they formed a small mountain on the bed, looking at these treasures I'd once joyfully handpicked while dreaming of our future. I quietly packed them all into a large bag. With my cousin's wedding approaching this winter and my uncle's family being financially strained, it seemed wasteful to discard these carefully curated items that had cost me a fortune. I packed everything up, ready to take it all to my cousin tomorrow. A knock at the door made me pause while organizing my things. Yuehua, about that. Could we postpone buying the jewelry for a few days? One of my comrades has an urgent need. Su Jinyan's voice came through the door. Jewelry shopping. I paused for a moment before remembering. In my past life, Su Jinyan had promised to take me jewelry shopping around this time. I recalled waiting at home all day with giddy anticipation, but Su Jinyan never showed up in the end. Needless to say, the jewelry shopping never happened. I gave a faint in response and went back to packing my things. He's not coming back anyway, so I can just humor him however I like. After waiting outside for a while, I finally heard the footsteps fade away. I went back to sorting through my own belongings. Truth be told, I haven't been living here long. My things barely fill a single box. What's troubling me are the rarely worn clothes. When I moved in, thinking we'd get married soon anyway, I brought over a large portion of my wardrobe from home. Looking back now, that was poor judgment. Now I've had to find a big bag, fold these clothes neatly, bundle them up properly, and send them back home for the time being. When I went downstairs, I found Su Jinyan had already taken the bike. Left with no choice, I lugged the heavy bag of clothes on my shoulder and trudged home for over half an hour. Mom thought Su Jinyan and I had fallen out when she saw me. To avoid jeopardizing my college plans, I had to keep this under wraps for now. I just told her I needed to store some new clothes I'd bought recently since there wasn't enough space at school. My mother finally breathed a sigh of relief. If my mom found out I was planning to break off the engagement with Su Jinyan, she'd probably chase me down 3 blocks with a knife. Yes, knife-wielding chase. 11. Our parents worked at the same state-owned enterprise, so Jinyan and I basically grew up together. Su Jinyan's always been that golden child, top grades growing up, stellar career now, and undeniably the best looking in our circle. My mom's had a soft spot for Su Jinyan forever. When matchmakers started setting me up, his parents immediately thought we'd make a perfect match. At first I assumed someone as handsome and successful as him would never look twice at me. To my surprise, my mom returned a few days later and excitedly told me that Su Jinyan actually had feelings for me too. That's when I gradually started getting to know him. Over the next 6 months, our relationship progressed by leaps and bounds, until a month ago, when both sets of parents officially settled our marriage arrangement. My mom said right then that a son-in-law as perfect as Su Jinyan was rarer than hen's teeth. She told me, the lucky duck who hit the jackpot, to hold on to him tight, or else. To be honest, I was in a complete daze when I first got together with Su Jinyan. It never crossed my mind that I'd actually become his wife. Occasionally, I'd notice Su Jinyan spacing out when we were together, but I just assumed he was preoccupied with work. Little did I know, behind my back, Su Jinyan had been wavering between me and Chenyi even before we got married. Maybe he simply thought I was the more suitable choice, or perhaps it was because both sets of parents approved of me, so he ultimately settled for me. At this point, the only thing standing between us was that marriage application. Back when I was taking the college entrance exams, he had me move in first so he could take care of me more easily. Now I've taken back that marriage application, so naturally, that's the end of us. 12. Stepping out of my house, free from all burdens, I found myself in an unusually leisurely mood. I bought an ice pop from a street vendor and strolled back unhurriedly. Actually, many street peddlers were already secretly setting up stalls despite being labeled as speculators. I also knew these unassuming vendors would become the first wave of 10,000 yuan households in this era, bound for college. I could only watch enviously as these street vendors were about to make their first fortune, while contributing to their success with my own purchases. Nearing my doorstep, my gaze was suddenly drawn to a man and woman standing together. Brother Su, please, no, I can't accept this. Chenyi's voice quivered with restrained tears, heartbreakingly fragile. Su Jinyan pushed his bicycle with one hand while insistently forcing the money into her palm with the other. Just take it when it's given to you. If I kept this money, I'd just end up spending it carelessly. You could use this to cover living expenses for most of the year. That's way more meaningful. As they struggled, Chenyi seemed to spot me. Her face went pale with shock as she instinctively shielded Su Jinyan. There's really nothing between us. Please don't misunderstand. It was me shamelessly clinging to Brother Sue. If you must blame someone, blame me. 13. The girl before me had a sallow complexion, her pitiful fragility masking an unyielding resolve. What she didn't see was Su Jinyan behind her, his face deathly pale as he stared at me. I twirled the newly bought bracelet on my wrist as I walked right past them without even a glance. What rotten luck. Can't even take a walk without running into people I'd rather not see. Not long after I got home, Su Jinyan pushed the door open and walked in. His frosty expression finally softened when he saw me. Yuehua, let me explain. I regarded him coolly. Go ahead. Truth be told, nothing he said would matter to me. Seeing I wasn't furious and still open to conversation, he subconsciously let out a relieved breath. I knew you wouldn't overthink things. I scoffed inwardly. He seemed to choose his words carefully before saying earnestly, it's not what it looks like. I stared at him impassively without a word. Once when I was injured, I ran into her on the way to the hospital. She bandaged my wound and accompanied me there. He glanced at me cautiously and continued, during my follow-up visits for dressing changes, I kept coincidentally bumping into her. Turns out she was a nursing student. I figured it'd be good practice for her. Too many coincidences stop being coincidental. I don't believe a grown man like Su Jinyan could possibly be that clueless. Just playing dumb while knowing full well, oh, so spending that money on jewelry for me was just casual spending, not worth it. Flowers would mean more coming from you, though I'd moved on. I couldn't resist throwing a barbed remark his way. Su Jinyan's expression faltered, looking flustered. That's not what I meant. Whether he meant it or not, he knew the truth in his heart. Honestly, it makes no difference to me either way. After some thought, I said earnestly, have you considered that we could still call off the engagement? I couldn't help but say, if he's the one to break it off, at least my mother won't make a scene or threaten suicide over it. Besides, in his past life, he grew increasingly distant after submitting our marriage application. Clearly he regretted it. If we could call off the engagement now, it would actually be for the best, for both him and me. To my surprise, Su Jinyan frowned at my words. Is marriage some kind of game? You can't just back out on a whim, Comrade Yuehua. This mindset of yours is problematic. Enough, I get it. I raised my hands in surrender, too exhausted to argue further, and retreated to my room. Rather than wasting time listening to his lecture, I'd better focus on figuring out which stock will make me a fortune. As for the money, I'll have to dip into my parents' savings for now, since my parents were so fond of Su Jinyan. They practically emptied their life savings for our wedding. In my past life, my parents gave me all the betrothal gifts from the Su family and furnished our home with appliances. Fortunately, the money is still with me. I haven't had the chance to spend it all yet. I took out the suitcase, carefully unwrapped the dowry money from the Su family, and rewrapped it in a different handkerchief. The money from my parents was then carefully tucked away again. Returning it is out of the question. I'll treat it as seed money. If mom makes a scene later, I'll just slap the cash right in front of her. Considering the money involved, I doubt she'd be that mad, right? 14. The next morning, the first thing I did was add a stroke to that old poster. 8 more days, just 8 more days, and I'm out of here. What are you writing? A deep voice suddenly came from behind me. Startled, I turned around to find Su Jinyan standing right behind me. He looked at me curiously. What are you writing on the newspaper? Standing uncomfortably close, he leaned slightly forward. His breath brushed against the nape of my neck, making me shiver before I hastily stepped back. That's disgusting. I was going to brush it off, but seeing him still stubbornly staring at the newspaper, I had to make up a random excuse. I was counting how many days it's been since you submitted your marriage report. Something I said must have pleased Su Jinyan, because his previously puzzled and slightly anxious expression suddenly relaxed. He let out a relieved sigh and brought his hands forward, revealing a square velvet box. Open it, Su Jinyan said, looking at me with hopeful anticipation. Me, honestly, it's just, really strange. In my past life, I was married to Su Jinyan for 50 years, we raised our son together and buried all 4 of our parents, yet he never bought me any jewelry. My eyes lingered on the velvet box with an inexplicable sense of irony. What's wrong? Go ahead and open it, Su Jinyan urged again. I took a deep breath and pushed it back. Take this back. Give it to me when our marriage application gets approved, I said flatly, but waiting for the marriage approval to come through. This lifetime, it'll never happen. The corner of my mouth twitched upward. Su Jinyan looked at the box in his hand and sighed. Alright, I'll keep it for now. I'll give it to you when our marriage gets approved. I have to say, I could tell Su Jinyan was somewhat disappointed. After all, when you eagerly give a gift only for the other person to refuse even looking at it, that really stings. But, so what? Compared to how he deceived and hurt me in our past life, It's just small potatoes compared to the real deal. Su Jinyan was about to leave after breakfast when he told me he'd come back early in the evening to take me to the movies. I neither agreed nor refused. I just watched him walk out the door. After Su Jinyan left, I went back to my room, carried out the belongings I'd packed yesterday, and left a note in the living room saying I'd be staying at my uncle's place for a few days. By the time I arrived in the neighboring town by bus, it was already noon. My uncle and aunt hadn't expected me. When they saw me entering with a large bundle on my back, they immediately set down their chopsticks and came to greet me. 15. Grandma hugged me so tightly she wouldn't let go, calling me her precious darling. Truth be told, I was overjoyed to see my grandmother who had passed away so young in my past life. With only 2 children of her own, Grandma always doted on me far more than my cousins, so this time when I returned, I not only brought back all the wedding supplies I'd packed yesterday, but also loads of nutritional supplements for Grandma. After some small talk, Uncle quietly went to catch a chicken to slaughter. Knowing I couldn't stop him, I just let it be. When Aunt saw my backpack, she thought I was fleeing some disaster, but when I opened it, she was speechless for a good while at what she saw inside. Smiling at their stunned expressions, I said, "Mom sent these back with me. If you want to thank anyone, thank her. I'll be facing Mom's wrath when I leave anyway. What's one more scolding when you're already in deep trouble?" I muttered to myself with a tinge of guilt. They finally relaxed when they heard it was my mom who asked me to bring these back, but my aunt still seemed uneasy, mainly because there was just too much stuff. My grandmother, however, took it in stride. With a wave of her hand, she said, "What's the big deal? It's for her niece's wedding. Can't we even give these as gifts? Put them away, put them away." Then she turned to me with a smile. "Now that Yuehwa's marriage is settled, you uncles and aunts should just be more generous with the dowry." My uncle and aunt finally nodded with approving smiles. I thoroughly enjoyed my stay at Grandma's, chatting late into the night while sharing a quilt with my cousin, and looking forward to Grandma's delicious homemade treats during the day. Without steady jobs, my aunt sold baked sweet potatoes outside the factory gates while my uncle mostly took odd jobs here and there. That day while helping my aunt sell sweet potatoes at the street stall, I noticed the neighboring hair accessory booth was doing brisk business. I asked her why she didn't switch to selling those instead. To my surprise, she just shook her head and said she had no supplier connections. Besides, stocking inventory would require substantial capital, and she'd have to constantly dodge city inspectors. The whole idea scared her. I pondered this quietly, filing the thought away in my mind. In their previous life, my uncle and aunt had endured such hardship that their hair turned gray prematurely. They've always treated me so well. This time when I return, if possible, I'm determined to help lift them out of poverty. Who knows, they might even become well off in the future. After understanding my aunt's mindset, I started casually mentioning how profitable street vending could be whenever we talked. With my daily nagging, Auntie began unconsciously observing the street vendor's business these days, gradually asking me questions like whether setting up a stall really earns more than selling baked sweet potatoes. I could tell Auntie was getting interested. Now we just needed to wait for the right opportunity. Once we secured a supplier, I figured Auntie wouldn't object to setting up the stall anymore. 16. A full week had passed by the time we returned from Grandma's place. I'd deliberately extended my stay at Grandma's this time. Once I left for college out of town, family gatherings would become far less frequent. During those days, I made daily trips to the neighboring stall. Eventually, I managed to get the supplier's details from the vendor lady. After stocking up with Auntie and my cousin and running the stall successfully for 2 days, I finally felt at ease enough to return. After putting away the things I brought back from Grandma's, I collapsed onto the bed. 17. I woke up to find dusk had fallen, the moment I stepped out of my room. The comforting aroma of home-cooked food greeted me. Just as I was about to speak, I caught the sound of cheerful banter from the kitchen, a girl's soft, lilting voice carrying through the doorway. I leaned casually against the doorframe, watching the two of them with amusement. So when Chenyi emerged carrying a bowl of food and spotted me lounging by the door, she shrieked in surprise, dropping the plate with a clatter. Su Jinyan came rushing out in a panic, but the moment he saw me, his face turned deathly pale. After a prolonged silence, I finally broke the tension. "What a lively scene you two have here. Should I give you some space?" Su Jinyan snapped back to reality and instinctively took a large step backward. "Sister Yuehua, why are you back?" Chenyi bit her lip, casting a resentful glance at Su Jinyan before looking at me with reluctant frustration. I chuckled mockingly. "What? Do I need your permission to come back here?" The moment I finished speaking, Chenyi took 2 steps back, tears streaming down her face like they cost nothing. Her lips trembled as she said, "Sister Yuehua, you know I didn't mean it that way." Before I could respond, Su Jinyan frowned again and snapped, "Yuehua, what kind of nonsense are you saying? I was just concerned about Yi studying here all alone with no one to look after her. With you away, I can't eat much by myself anyway. That's why I invited her over to share the meal. Stop fooling around, humph." Seeing the man instinctively shielding Chen Yi, I didn't hesitate to slap him across the face. Su Jinyan stood stunned. It never crossed my mind that I'd come to blows with him. Through him, I saw Chen Yi's lips curl into a smirk as she stared at me with defiance. I let out a scornful laugh. Under their dual gaze, I picked up the pen from the table and began writing, stroke by deliberate stroke, with heavy finality, filled in all the missing strokes on the old poster. Just 2 more strokes left. That would be the day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow. I can finally leave this place and never have to lay eyes on those disgusting things again. 18. After Chen Yi left, Su Jinyan stared at the tally marks I'd recorded, feeling an inexplicable unease. He couldn't pinpoint why. But something felt profoundly off. His gaze instinctively sought me out. "Yuehua." I turned to face him with complete impassivity. Su Jinyan paused. "There's really nothing between me and Yi." I didn't feel like talking to him further, so I just picked up my chopsticks and started eating. Seeing my reluctance to engage, Su Jinyan fell silent. After dinner, while I was organizing the things brought back from Grandma's house, he suddenly remarked, "By the way, Yuehua, why are there so few things in your room now? Didn't you prepare lots of wedding items before?" When I remained silent, Su Jinyan suddenly seemed flustered. "I was thinking, since we've already submitted our marriage application, we could start decorating this place gradually. I noticed you'd already bought window decals and stickers earlier. Hand them over, I'll start putting them up." I scoffed. "The hell with your decorations. Go get them from my cousin if you want decorations that badly." Not wanting to argue with him, I just said, "It's still early, let's talk about it another day." Seeing my response, Su Jinyan assumed the matter was settled. He visibly relaxed. The next morning, to my surprise, Su Jinyan had breakfast ready. After finishing the meal, I didn't go out by myself. Ignoring him, I picked up the pen on the table and solemnly made another note. Finally, the last day. At 6 tomorrow morning, I'll be able to leave this place. Watching me jot down notes earnestly, Su Jinyan chuckled. "Don't worry, the marriage application should be approved soon." Avoiding his gaze, I started clearing the dishes. "Why haven't you left yet today?" Su Jinyan smiled at me. "Since we're getting married soon, let me take you shopping for some new clothes." My hands froze mid-task. His words suddenly reminded me, I'm about to start college soon. Time to get some new clothes for this fresh chapter. I went back to my room to get the money, seeing I didn't refuse. Su Jinyan unconsciously let out a sigh of relief this time. 20. In the end, we never did buy that dress. The moment we stepped outside, we spotted Chen Yi leaning against the wall. She looked like she'd been keeping vigil all night. Su Jinyan gave her a startled nudge, and Chen Yi's eyes fluttered open, seeing us together, apparently about to head out. She instinctively rose to her feet and looked at me. "Sister Yuehua, I'm sorry about yesterday." Chen Yi squinted at me briefly before suddenly closing her eyes and collapsing into Su Jinyan's arms. Su Jinyan's expression changed abruptly as he shook the unconscious girl in his arms. I silently crouched down and pressed hard on Chen Yi's philtrum. Chen Yi gave a slight shudder but stubbornly refused to wake up. I couldn't help but admire Chen Yi's composure. Seeing I was about to try again, Su Jinyan hesitated with Chen Yi in his arms, then moved her away from my reach. "She's severely malnourished and anemic. I'm taking her to the hospital." Su Jinyan dashed out without looking back, cradling the person in her arms. I closed the door behind me and followed at a leisurely pace. I watched as Su Jinyan began keeping anxious vigil by the bedside after the doctor left. I walked over. Su Jinyan paused when he saw me, his brow furrowing. "What are you doing here?" he said. I studied the person on the bed carefully. Truth be told, she wasn't much to look at. Malnutrition left her gaunt with pronounced cheekbones that gave her a rather severe appearance. I lifted my gaze to Su Jinyan again. Maybe that's just his type. Under my stare, Su Jinyan instinctively averted his eyes. I said calmly while looking at them both, "On the day you submitted your marriage application, she jumped into the river." My words must have been too shocking. Even the person on the bed jerked violently. Su Jinyan instinctively stood up. Knocking over the chair behind him, he blurted out reflexively, "What?" I added, "You gave her the money meant for my jewelry. You said spending it on me would be wasteful, but for her, It could cover half a year's living expenses. I raised my hand to stop him. His words no longer mattered. During my absence, you brought her into our home, letting her cross the threshold as if she belonged here. Su Jinyan's lips parted, but I silenced him with another gesture. I turned to look at the bed and said, you know she's faking it, yet you're still planning to stay here all night. I refused to believe Su Jinyan, a trained soldier, couldn't tell she was pretending to faint. It's just a case of mutual affection between two willing parties. If you don't want to marry, you can call off the engagement, but you have no right to humiliate me like this, I said calmly, staring at them both. Only when I mentioned calling off the engagement did Su Jinyan panic. No. I won't break it off. I glanced at the person on the bed. Unbelievable they could still keep up the act at this point. What a master of endurance. But if she hadn't been so patient, she wouldn't have won Su Jinyan in her past life either. Su Jinyan continued, I just pitied her, that's all. She's got no family left, and I could see she didn't even have money for meals. That's why I thought I should help if I could. We're all comrades here, we ought to help each other out. Su Jinyan raised his voice slightly, as if trying desperately to convince himself. I saw tears roll down from the corners of the person's eyes on the bed. TSK. I shook my head. Suit yourself, I'm heading out first. As I reached the door, Su Jinyan's voice called after me, go ahead first, I'll catch up with you later. 21. I certainly wasn't going to take his words to heart. I bought 2 new outfits. Then made a point of waiting for my parents to finish work so we could enjoy a nice meal together at the state-run restaurant. It wasn't until evening that I finally made it back to my place. Everything that needed packing was packed, and what needed delivering had been sent off. But Su Jinyan still hadn't returned even past 11. Meanwhile, I'd already finished writing the complaint letter to Chenyi's school. Considerate repayment for her tireless efforts, keeping vigil by my bedside those few days in our past life. As for Su Jinyan, out of respect for our parents' relationship, I had no choice but to let it go. But the engagement must be called off. I documented all his entanglements with Chenyi during this period and dropped the letter in the mailbox before dawn. Mom should receive my letter tomorrow or the day after. Early next morning, after washing up, I stood before the old poster again and carefully added the final stroke. Then I hoisted my bundle and walked away without looking back. It took half a day on the train before I finally got a seat ticket. Watching the crowds come and go on the platform, I knew each person here was about to embark on a new journey, and so was I. The end. 24. Su Jinyan, extra story. Yuehua just vanished from my life like that. Everything in the room was gone. She didn't even leave me a single word. Well, if I had to say there was something, it would be those 2 tally marks on the poster in the room. Only now do I realize that wasn't the date she recorded my marriage application submission, but rather, the day she decided to leave. Only later did I discover Yuehua had actually retrieved our marriage application the very day I submitted it. She'd even neatly placed the betrothal gifts from my family back in the drawer. His parents came to visit with mine 3 days later. That's when I realized Yuehua had been so bothered by Chenyi all along. But why couldn't you just give me one last chance? Yuehua said she was faking her illness as if I didn't already know. So I thought, once she's discharged this time, I'd definitely cut ties with her. I wouldn't make Yuehua unhappy for her sake. Yet she didn't even give me that chance. She left resolutely. I begged her parents not to call off the engagement. I swear I will. I'll make Yuehua change her mind, no matter what. But his parents just shook their heads, gave me a disappointed look, and left. I sat there numbly in the place where she once lived. This was where she used to be. I instinctively opened the cabinet where she kept the wedding quilt, only to find everything gone. Then I collapsed onto the floor. So she'd really been planning to leave me all along. It dawned on me belatedly. Then Chenyi suddenly showed up at my door. She said she'd been reported. The school expelled her. I watched her silently without a word. She begged me, pleading if I could help her, if I could take her in temporarily. I wordlessly pushed her away. How could I? My Yuehua left because of her. If I have even the slightest connection with her again, there'll be no chance for Yuehua and me in this lifetime. Chenyi couldn't accept it. She knew Yuehua had left. She started pestering me here. But I was soon transferred, with Yuehua gone. Staying here held no meaning for me whatsoever. I still remember when I was little, my parents took me to visit a family. There was this tiny girl who always clung to me. She'd follow me around begging for stories, then giggle and throw herself into my arms. Eventually, she grew up. The matchmaker came to my door, saying she wanted to set me up on a date. I wasn't really in the mood for that sort of thing. But when I heard the person's name, I inexplicably agreed. Later, our relationship progressed smoothly. She became my fiancé, but now everything has come to nothing. After being transferred to the Southern Military District, I wrote to her, but she never replied to a single letter. I used to sneak over to see her. She's grown taller, and her hair's longer now, and she's become even more beautiful than before. She's got a few good friends around her now, but I didn't dare let her see me. Turns out my whole life has been a joke. I secretly bought a house, thinking if she'd forgive me, I'd propose right away. After waiting so long, I rushed over with a bouquet of roses, but what I saw was someone else standing by her side. Later, I heard she got married right after college, then they had a daughter. I also heard she made a fortune in stock trading, and then, I wasted my entire life away. On my deathbed, I glimpsed the life I might have lived. I saw myself marrying Yuehua. I saw that we had our own child, but then I unexpectedly saw Chani again. Seeing my middle-aged self, I was finally moved by Chani, tacitly accepting that she had adopted a child, silently accepting when her child called me daddy. Once again, she silently followed that version of me without protest. But wait, what else did I just witness? To my horror, Chani was actually saying those vile things by Yuehua's hospital bed. I reached out desperately to stop it, but my efforts were utterly futile. I jolted awake to the beeping sound, my head heavy and limbs weak. I saw Yuehua emerge from the secretary's office, tossing a crumpled paper into the trash. My heart ached as I rushed after her. I thought to myself, surely I can still change the course of my life. The beeping sound continued. The end. Story 2. My brother has hated me for 7 years. The last time, I quarreled with him and left angrily on a rainy night, accidentally fell into the river and suffered memory loss. In the hospital, he was relieved and casually pointed to a terminally ill patient, saying, "That's your real brother. Make sure you recognize this clearly, and don't bother me again." The pale-faced man approached and gently patted my head. "Let's go then. Big brother will take you home." Later, to save my terminally ill big brother, I braved snow-blocked roads to fetch a renowned doctor and stayed up countless nights with him, even at the cost of half my life. My elder brother stopped me in the freezing snow, his voice trembling with panic. "Have you really forgotten me?" The doctor declared my memory was disordered when I first woke up in the hospital bed. Falling from a great height into the river caused a cerebral concussion, and I was unconscious for over half a month. Half a month ago, I had a huge argument with my elder brother Gu Nanzhao. As I slammed the door to leave, I shouted angrily, "I'd rather die than let you collect my corpse." Gu Nanzhao's face was contorted with rage as he sneered behind me. "Then I hope you get what you wish for." And now, half a month later, I'm still alive. Opening my eyes, the early winter sunlight streamed through the hospital room window. After a long moment of dazed vision, I finally began to hear. Outside the hospital room, the doctor was speaking to Gu Nanzhao. 1. Head trauma, prolonged unconsciousness, memory loss or confusion are both possible. Not only might I forget my loved ones, I might not even remember myself. I struggled out of bed, wanting to go out and explain that my memory wasn't failing. I hate being hospitalized. I don't want to be trapped in the hospital because of this diagnosis. As I approached the door, I heard Gu Nanzhao's cold, deep voice. His tone seemed to carry something else, perhaps even something akin to delight. This could be considered a good thing. As if to confirm the doctor's words, he added, "She woke up groggily once last night, looked at me and asked who I was." I vaguely recalled the scene of briefly waking up last night. Gu Nanzhao was right, but at that time, I only asked him that because I was disoriented and couldn't clearly see faces in my blurred vision. The hand gripping the doorknob froze momentarily. The doctor spoke reassuringly, "There's no need to rush. We can only confirm after your sister wakes up. Even if there are memory issues, we can still." Then, it was Gu Nanzhao who interrupted the doctor's words. "Forgetting is good, no need to help her recover." I even detected a trace of unconcealed delight in his tone. "Is that how it is? Hoping I'd forget about him, all these years. After Mom and Dad passed away, I've argued with him countless times, but in this world, he's the only family I have left. I've thought about death as an easy way out. Now that I've survived a brush with death, I hope to talk with him again." Open the door. I met a momentarily startled gaze outside the door, which quickly turned cold, because I've been unconscious for too long. When I spoke, my voice was somewhat hoarse. "Brother, actually Gu Nanzhao quickly furrowed his brows, looking at me in disbelief. Soon, it seemed as if he was deceiving himself. He concluded that I must have lost my memory and was randomly calling him brother. There were many patients coming and going in the corridor. He seemed eager to shake me off, even reaching out to randomly point at a passing patient without looking, saying, "That's your brother." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Stunned, I looked at him and asked, "What?" In Gu Nanzhao's eyes, there was a fleeting hesitation and struggle. "We've been siblings for over 20 years, no matter how much he hates or resents me. I still can't believe he would push me toward a complete stranger while I'm still recovering from my injuries. I think it's really time for us to have a proper talk. I was about to speak, no longer wanting to sulk. He suddenly spoke again, cutting me off. I said, "That's your real brother. Get it straight, don't call people randomly, and don't bother me again." This time, he seemed to have made up his mind, when signaling to the man who had stopped again. There was no hesitation left in his expression. The doctor, seemingly afraid to speak out of turn, had already left. The corridor was bustling with people, and various gazes were directed at me. It seems I truly am the fool who lost his mind after falling into the water, unable to even recognize my own elder brother. The man identified as my brother leaned against the wall, standing at the other end of the corridor. His figure was tall and slender, with striking features, yet unable to conceal the excessive pallor in his complexion. Any normal person would feel anger upon hearing such absurd accusations, but he just calmly looked at Gu Nanzhao through the passing crowd, then turned his gaze to me. It seemed like he was waiting for us to continue speaking. Gu Nanzhao spoke coldly again. "I'm just an ordinary friend of your brother, here to visit you out of courtesy. Go find him yourself. Whether he acknowledges you as his sister or not is between you two." As he finished speaking, he turned and walked toward the end of the corridor, leaving without hesitation. My hand hanging by my side trembled uncontrollably, even though I kept telling myself that his hatred for me was nothing new. It was just losing a brother who despised me. After all, we had never gotten along properly all these years, yet the rims of my eyes still uncontrollably reddened. Bewilderment, humiliation, resentment, and fury, emotions tangled together. In the end, I couldn't utter another word. Watching Gu Nanzhao leave, my vision blurred momentarily as I hastily reached out to steady myself against the doorframe. A buzzing sound filled my ears, leaving me dazed for quite some time. The man who had been silently watching suddenly reacted. He released his hand from the wall and walked toward me. For a moment, I even thought he was coming to accuse us of staging the accident. Gu Nanzhao left, so he could only scold me. Instinctively, I wanted to take a step back, but perhaps it was due to being unconscious for too long, coupled with sudden emotional turmoil. My body felt weak, and I couldn't lift my foot. Then, I realized belatedly, a hand landed on my head. I felt as if he had hit me, but the touch was so light, it seemed he had merely patted my head. It took me a while before I finally heard his voice, weary yet gentle. "Let's go then, I'll take you home, little brother." How many years had it been since Gu Nanzhao last called himself my elder brother? Too long, I can't even remember anymore. I looked up blankly. I'd been quarreling with him for years, for so many years, ever since my parents passed away. I think I might have truly gone mad. I looked at this unfamiliar man whom I had never seen before. I nodded again and said, "All right." I followed a stranger back to an unfamiliar home. The interior was so clean and desolate that it even felt somewhat eerie. Everywhere was spotless, devoid of any living presence. Like the man's excessively pale and lifeless face, many years ago, I might have been afraid, too, but now, life and death no longer matter to me. There is nothing left for me to fear. I look around, then I glance at the coffee table, where several small white medicine bottles are placed. Those bottles are very familiar to me. They contain the same medicine I used to hoard. It's a pity doctors are always so cautious. No matter what excuses I make, like insomnia or stress, they're never willing to give me a couple extra pills. I've been saving for nearly half a year, and only managed to accumulate a little over 10 tablets. I stare at those medicine bottles. Somewhat amusingly, I actually felt an instinctive envy. That amount would be enough to die. Beside the medicine bottle lay a photograph, somewhat peculiar, roughly 12 inches in size, in black and white. The man in the photo looks at the camera, calm and expressionless. The photo was so conspicuous that I couldn't help but take another look. I glanced sideways at the man standing beside me, whose expression was almost identical to the one in the photo. Even after being seen with such a thing, the man's expression remained unchanged. He calmly walked over to the coffee table and casually put the medicine bottle and photo into the drawer, then said gently, "Sit down, I'll go cook for you." Oh, he really seemed to believe it. That there was something wrong with my brain, making me forget my own brother. I regained some of my rationality. Deceiving someone who already wants to die carries a certain guilt in one's conscience. I want to explain before leaving. Recalling that photo, those pills, suddenly, I became curious about what misfortunes he had experienced that would make him, like me, want to end his life. And how did he manage to buy those drugs? As if possessed, I sat down. The man went into the kitchen, saying he would cook, but there was no movement for a long time. Feeling puzzled, I got up and walked to the kitchen door. I saw him open the refrigerator door, staring blankly inside. The huge refrigerator was as empty as the house, not even a single ingredient, not even a bottle of water. Clearly, no fire had been lit in this kitchen for a long time. There wasn't even a pot on the gas stove. Only an earthen jar remained, likely used for brewing medicine or similar purposes. It took him a long while to finally snap out of his daze. "Avert your gaze from the refrigerator and look at me again." The man spoke with a hint of guilt. "Sorry, I forgot to buy groceries. I'll go out for a bit." Over these years, I've often looked at my reflection in the mirror, feeling like I'm clearly still alive, yet also like a soul that's lost its breath and floated up into midair. And now, I suddenly realized there was actually someone in this world who resembled a corpse more than I did. He walked past me and continued outside. I couldn't even hear his footsteps or sense the slightest trace of his breath. It suddenly occurred to me that perhaps this complete stranger would never come back, just like that night when I quarreled with Gu Nanzhao and then fell into the river. Both Gu Nanzhao and the doctor believed it was because the rain was too heavy that night, and the bridge was too slippery. I accidentally fell in, but I know deep down, it's not. The man walked to the entranceway, about to step out. I looked at his back and suddenly said, "I like eating fish." The figure at the entrance froze abruptly. He halted his steps and turned around, still looking at me calmly and lifelessly. "What?" I met his gaze and repeated. I said, "I want to eat fish, brother. Could you cook fish for dinner tonight?" The front door was left open. The early winter evening was windy, and a cold breeze rushed in through the door. The hem of his coat fluttered, and his already messy bangs became even more disheveled, making his face appear even more deathly pale. The man's palm hanging at his side seemed to tremble slightly. After a long pause, he responded, I watched him leave, then the door closed. In that case, he'll probably come back, right? Thinking about it, I found it truly ridiculous. I'm someone who's about to go seek death myself, yet here I am, seemingly still concerned about the life or death of a stranger. I sat back on the sofa, and as soon as I closed my eyes, those images flooded back. My parents, who should have been safe and sound, were buried beneath the rubble, yet I was rescued, surviving to this day by stepping over my parents' 2 lives. The scene shifted to Gu Nanzhao's eyes filled with resentment, the sound of gnashing teeth. "Gu Nanzhao, you're the one who deserves to die. It's only right that you're dead, Gu Nanzhao. After all these years, have you truly lived with a clear conscience?" I have no peace in my heart, so all these years, I've never had a single night of truly peaceful sleep, trapped in a nightmare. It took me a long while to struggle awake. Opening my eyes, I looked toward the closed drawer beneath the coffee table. As if my hand had a will of its own, it reached over, silently opened the drawer again, and took out those medicine bottles. I've never stolen anything in my life, so when I reached out, even my palm quickly became damp. But I had carefully checked the dosage of this medication. I'll use half and leave the other half for him. As for the remainder, if he truly wishes to end his life, it should suffice. My consciousness was somewhat scattered as I tried to comfort myself while trembling hands opened a medicine bottle. The phone left on the coffee table suddenly rang. The abrupt sound almost exploded in the deathly silent living room. It nearly made me drop the medicine bottle in my hand. I felt extremely guilty. In a fluster, I dropped the medicine bottle and reached for the phone. Only after answering did I suddenly realize this wasn't my phone. The man had left his phone at home when he went out. The call connected. An infuriated voice immediately came through. "I'm telling you, Pei Yan, you can't keep a single cent of that 700 million from me. Not a chance. Even if I didn't raise you, I still fathered you. That cheap sister of yours died for you. As the father, inheriting my terminally ill son's property is only right and proper. Want to donate it all. Keep dreaming." I didn't mean to pry into others' private affairs, but their emotional outburst was simply too intense, their words too rapid. By the time I came to my senses and hastily hung up the phone, I had already heard quite a bit. A slip of paper had fallen onto the carpet. It seemed to have been pulled out from the drawer when I hurriedly took out the medicine bottle earlier. It was a diagnosis slip for end-stage heart failure, with the patient's name field reading Pei Yan. The name sounded vaguely familiar, identical to the one angrily mentioned during the phone call earlier. It took me a moment to recall. I'd recently seen it trending online. 3. The founder and CEO of Yenqing Technology abruptly announced plans to sell the company at the peak of its success. A hasty sale at this juncture would undoubtedly be disadvantageous. In the news, when the media swarms in, the man was like that too, lifeless and expressionless, only a brief response, "A bit tired, want to rest." So, it was him after all. It turned out he intended to end his life because of a terminal illness. How unpredictable life can be. Healthy people want to die, while those with thriving careers are struck by terminal illnesses. I carefully picked up the document, along with the medicine bottle. It was placed back in the drawer, stealing medicine from a terminally ill patient to take. I'm afraid even if I get my wish and go to hell, the king of hell would spit in disgust. The sky darkened as rain began to fall outside the window. Raindrops pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows as the downpour intensified, until the last glimmer of daylight faded. There was still no movement at the entrance. Could he really have died out there, after an internal struggle? He finally got up and stepped out the door. The car is still parked in the front yard. He left on foot. Without his phone, he couldn't hail a taxi, at least not before leaving the villa area. Perhaps he didn't go too far. I took an umbrella and went out, leaving the villa area. I hailed a taxi again and asked the driver to take me to the nearest mall. Actually, I thought perhaps he hadn't returned so late because he went out to buy fish, but I still wanted to look for him. The weather was cold, and there were fewer people in the mall than usual. I searched floor by floor, but didn't see any trace of that person. Just as I was thinking about trying another mall to continue my search, behind me, a cold and angry voice suddenly rang out. Who told you to follow me here? It was Gunanjao's voice. I turned around. There stood Gunanjao with a cold expression, glaring at me disapprovingly from not far away. Beside him was Linanan, the daughter of a CEO with whom he recently collaborated on a major project. While negotiating a business deal, he somehow ended up gaining a sworn little sister. The other company's CEO kept praising him as warm-hearted and kind, but only I knew he was never that type of person. He just didn't like me, his own younger sister. My heart felt like it was soaked in water, aching with a sour swelling. It took me many years to adjust. About the brother who used to always accompany and indulge me, complying with my every whim. Later, he came to despise me utterly, hurling harsh words my way. Yet in the end, I still could never truly get used to it or remain unaffected. I remained silent for a long while before barely suppressing that discomfort in my heart. Clutching the umbrella tightly in my hand, I tried my best to remain calm as I looked at him and said, I wasn't following you. I came here to find someone. Gunanjao's eyes burned with even greater fury. A place you'd never come before. If not following me, who else could you possibly be looking for? As soon as he finished speaking, behind him, I saw that familiar figure. To be honest, I still couldn't quite recall the face of that man named Pei Yen, but it would be hard to find another person whose face could be so pale and lifeless. He stood there, at a distance neither too far nor too close. He didn't come any closer, still looking at me calmly. It seemed he quite liked it this way, watching me from a little further away. Gunanjao, receiving no response from me for a while, frowned and said, I'm talking to you. Stop following me secretly. I'm not your brother, understand? Pei Yen was holding a plastic bag in his hand. The transparent bag revealed the processed fish inside. After being out for over 3 hours, he actually went to buy fish, for no reason. I suddenly remembered many years ago, late at night, I pestered Gunanjao, saying I wanted to eat the handmade osmanthus cakes from that shop in the east of the city. He scolded me with a stern face, saying kids who eat sweets at night will get cavities. Besides, it's late at night, and the pastry shop has long been closed. In the middle of the night, he returned covered in the chill of the night, sneaking into my bedroom quietly, hiding it from Mom and Dad. The osmanthus cake tucked in his embrace was still warm. He sternly admonished me, saying, this is the last time, but later, there would still be countless last times. I pulled back my thoughts and looked at the fish again. Suddenly, I let out a soft chuckle. Gunanjao looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost. Following my gaze to look behind him, his expression instantly turned shocked and furious. Why is this man still here? I finally withdrew my gaze and gave him an answer. I wasn't following you. I came to find my brother. Gunanjao's gaze remained fixed on Pei Yen, his expression seemingly guarded. His tone carried reproach, yet his response was directed at me. I told you, I'm not your brother. Stop calling me that. I walked past him and stopped in front of Pei Yen. The man who left the house neatly dressed now appeared normal at first glance, yet his shoes were visibly wet, with mud stains on his black trousers. That night when I fell into the river and was rescued by passers-by, I was covered in similar mud. Perhaps Pei Yen had been to the riverside, but in the end, he still came back. He came to the mall and bought the fish he promised me. I reached out and took the bag from his hand. Looking back at him, she said, let's go home, brother. A sudden tremor passed through Pei Yan's calm yet shadowed eyes. Before he could respond, Gunanjao had already charged forward in uncontrollable rage. What did you call him, Gunanjao? Have you lost your mind? I looked at him with a puzzled expression and said, this is my brother. What else should I call him? didn't you already know? Gunanjao's face turned ashen, momentarily speechless, unable to utter a word for quite some time. As I walked away arm in arm with Pei Yin, he finally caught up and stopped me in furious anger. You haven't come home all afternoon, Gunanjiao. You're not really going home with this man, are you? You dare run off with a stranger? Have you lost your mind? My throat felt tight, and for a moment I couldn't speak. He was so agitated, as if the one who fantasized about me losing my memory in the afternoon and couldn't wait to cut ties with me wasn't him. Gunanjiao saw that I wasn't speaking and began to lose control of his emotions. He reached out and grabbed Pei Yan by the collar. This is kidnapping. I can call the police right now. Pei Yan still didn't move. He calmly met Gunanjiao's gaze and, after a moment, only replied, she's an adult. Gunanjiao grew even more furious, his palm tightening. I was terrified that Pei Yan would be pushed down by him. The man's face was deathly pale, as if even a gust of wind could make him collapse the next moment. I angrily shoved Gunanjiao. Let go. More and more people were looking over curiously. Gunanjiao had always been a respectable man. After a long stalemate, he finally released his grip with resentment. He stared at Pei Yan and let out a cold laugh. She said you're her brother. Fine, even if I just ask once. Do you even know her name? Gunanjiao. I immediately responded. Gunanjiao was nearly hopping mad. I was asking him, who told you to answer? Gunanjiao, just keep pretending. You know perfectly well he doesn't even know your name. I said calmly, you should get your head examined. Pei Yan and I left. Behind us came Gunanjiao's angry, mocking laugh. Did you think pretending to lose your memory could really erase the fact that you killed our parents, letting you go on living selfishly without a care? I instinctively quickened my pace. Later, I didn't dare listen to another word behind me. When hurrying out of the mall, it was almost like fleeing in panic. I reached the roadside and took a taxi home with Pei Yan. Oh, that's not my home, that's Pei Yan's place. Sitting in the back seat of the car. My mind was filled with words I've heard countless times over the years. Gunanjiao, that's the fact that you caused our parents' death. Gunanjiao, why are you still alive? Gunanjiao, it's you who deserves to die. A tissue was silently handed to me from beside. Only then did I realize I had shed tears. I took the tissue and, through blurred vision, turned to look at the person beside me. I said, I regret it too. After a long pause, he responded softly, I wanted to laugh, but didn't. He doesn't even understand. Why is he saying He is merely a stranger who has never met me before, yet tears refused to obey. Hearing that it felt as if Gunanjiao was truly responding to me. After 7 years, he was finally willing to properly listen to a single word I said. I wiped my eyes haphazardly, tears soaking through the thin tissue. The person beside me stayed silent. Handing over another one, he didn't ask why I was crying, didn't ask if I'd remembered something. Didn't ask whether I truly remembered or not. He didn't ask anything, just remained silent, until I cried myself to exhaustion, leaned back against the seat, and fell into a deep sleep. In the dream, Mom gently touched my head and said, Xiao Qiao, don't cry, Mom will help you beat up your brother. Okay, I was a premature baby. Weighing less than 2 kilograms at birth, before I was even a month old, I nearly died in the incubator. My parents were heartbroken for me. From the moment I was born, they poured almost all their love and care into me alone. They would start preparing the celebration nearly half a month in advance before each of my birthdays. No matter how busy with work or how far away abroad, they never missed a single parent-teacher meeting, Children's Day, or anniversary of mine. They hired professional nannies to take me to and from school and take care of my daily meals, would indulge me in taking leave to go to the amusement park, then hire the gentlest tutor to help me catch up on missed lessons. For many years of my childhood, I took pride in this, until the year I turned 7, when I bought a gift after school for my brother Gunanjiao's birthday and came home, only to find Gunanjiao alone in his bedroom, eating a palm-sized cake. My parents went on a business trip out of town, and the nanny prepared dinner before leaving. I suddenly realized that for many years, I seemed to be the only one in this household who consistently remembered Gunanjiao's birthday, apart from himself. It appears it was only me. That night, I felt indignant on Gunanjiao's behalf and wiped away angry tears. He frantically dropped the cake and hugged me, coaxing me by saying, It's okay, big brother, just like Mom and Dad. Big brother only cares that little sister is healthy, that's all that matters. He didn't just say it, he meant it. Ever since I can remember, my elders have often joked with me about it. When I was born and put in an incubator, nearly dying, Gunanjiao cried harder than anyone. That's why my parents treasure me most, their miracle survivor. Gunanjiao feels the same way, yet he was also a child. With a birthday of his own, he wasn't born to be overlooked, born to always prioritize his younger sister. His parents still forgot his birthday countless times. Even on Gu Nanzhao's 18th birthday, they remained indifferent as if nothing was amiss. After driving Gu Nanzhao off to cram school early in the morning, I had to rush off for a business trip out of town. Coincidentally, I was on vacation at home. Mom didn't trust me alone, so she packed my luggage and insisted I come along. Furious, I shouted angrily, "I won't go. I hate you all, and I never want to go anywhere with you again." Mom's eyes turned red with sorrow. Dad had no choice but to ask the nanny to take good care of me before leaving with Mom. I stayed alone in the bedroom, preparing for Gu Nanzhao's coming-of-age ceremony. Using my New Year's money, I booked the banquet venue in advance. He created a group chat again, inviting me along with his friends and classmates. I think parents and elders don't care about my brother, but I do. In the evening, I sent a message in the group chat. Just as I was about to call Gu Nanzhao to ask him to go to the hotel for a surprise, inside the house, a faint tremor suddenly began. Then the chandelier on the ceiling abruptly fell, striking my head. My vision blurred into a hazy crimson, and I can scarcely recall what happened next. I collapsed to the ground, panicked and desperate to escape, yet too weak to rise. Then came my parents as if descending from the heavens. They might have entered through the bedroom door, or perhaps the window. Beneath the collapsing roof, they held me tight. The nanny fled alone in the critical moment. My brother, in the same cram school that also experienced the earthquake, was trapped under the rubble. In the endless darkness around me, amidst the growing drowsiness, listening to my parents' anxious, exhausted, and persistent voices, "Be good, Xiao Qiao. Don't fall asleep." That year, on your brother's 3rd birthday, he pestered our parents to go out and play. Mom accidentally took a fall. And after a week of bed rest to prevent miscarriage, you were still born prematurely. All these years, it's not that Mom and Dad forgot your brother's birthday, it's his guilt. He feels that celebrating his birthday is even more painful than not celebrating it at all. Be good, Xiao Qiao. Don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep. I don't remember what time I was rescued. My parents' voices still echoed in my ears, but only their bodies were recovered. I couldn't believe it and asked the rescuers, but I just heard their voices. The rescuers told me it was a recording. 5. Liar. They left first, recorded the sound with a phone, telling me not to sleep, because I said I hated them. They were so heartbroken they didn't eat or drink all day, said they'd go out of town, but never did. Come back to save me when the earthquake strikes again. Hungry, thirsty, and exhausted, they didn't survive the night. My life suddenly became a complete mess. No one ever mentioned that 18th birthday surprise I prepared for Gu Nanzhao again. Gu Nanzhao was rescued from the ruins of the cram school. My always gentlest brother confronted me with grief and anger for the first time. Weren't Mom and Dad taking you on a business trip? Why did you stay home? Why are you always so disobedient? Is it because you're throwing a tantrum to go to the amusement park again? I stared at his ferocious, nearly torn apart face. Suddenly I felt some truths didn't need to be spoken anymore. When it comes to my parents' death, my suffering and guilt alone are enough. Gu Nanzhao doesn't need to know it's related to him. In the end, his eyes turned bloodshot with rage. For the first time, he cursed at me. Gu Nanzhao, you're utterly despicable. Even later, when a mutual friend, despite my protests, revealed that I had been preparing a birthday celebration for him that day, but Gu Nanzhao didn't believe it. He sneered mockingly at me. Gu Nanzhao, is the truth that your willfulness caused your parents' death really so hard for you to admit? After that, he never again spoke a single kind word to me. Once again, I was trapped in a nightmare, shivering all over, yet drenched in cold sweat, until someone beside me called softly, "Wake up, wake up." The person gently nudged my arm. The gentle voice sounded just like my parents coaxing in the dream. "Don't fall asleep." I jolted awake from the dream, gasping heavily with huffing breaths. It took a while for my vision to clear. The taxi had already stopped outside the villa area. Pei Yan turned his head, looking at me with some concern. He grabbed a tissue. After a moment's hesitation, he wiped the sweat from my forehead, then asked me, "You look pale. Are you carsick?" I tilted my head to look at him, remaining silent for a while, perhaps because I'd just woken up. His face appeared alternately clear and blurry to me, vaguely. It seemed as if Gu Nanzhao came into view again. Pei Yan let out a soft sigh, then took out the wallet to pay the fare, pushed open the car door, and helped me out. "It's not far now. Let's walk back." "Okay." I still remained silent and followed him out of the car. The night grew deeper, and a heavy rain had already ceased. Standing by the unfamiliar roadside, I shrank my neck as the wind blew against my face. Suddenly, there was a moment of daze, unsure of what year or month it was now. "I don't know why I came here." Pei Yan also seemed at a loss for words. He stood with me for a while, then looked at the 2 umbrellas still in my hands before asking, Did you go out of your way to bring me an umbrella? I stared at him for a long time. After a long while, I finally nodded. Right, you didn't drive. And you didn't bring your phone either. I couldn't tell if it was the street light playing tricks or my blurred vision creating an illusion. I sighed. I noticed Pei Yan's expression falter slightly, and for a fleeting moment, his eyes seemed to redden. Actually, I wasn't just going to bring him an umbrella. I thought he might have died out there, but saying such things out loud doesn't sound good after all. I followed Pei Yan as we walked into the villa area. I hadn't gone far before feeling too exhausted to continue. That familiar palpitation, mixed with a headache, wave after wave came crashing over me. My therapist told me it's completely normal for depression patients to experience such situations. When you suddenly feel uncomfortable, find a comfortable place to rest for a while. Find 1 or 2 close friends or relatives to accompany you and listen to your thoughts. But I lost the friends or relatives who were willing to listen to me long ago. My brother Gu Nanzhao hates me. He took over the family business 7 years ago, and all my former friends and relatives have more or less relied on his help. So gradually, like Gu Nanzhao, they all stopped treating me well. I lost the desire to confide in others a long time ago. Enduring the headache, I stopped walking and stood still. Pei Yan walked a short distance ahead, probably noticing I hadn't followed. He turned back to look at me in the night. Again like that, watching me silently from a distance. Suddenly I understood why he always liked doing this. Perhaps from further away, it's easier to mistake someone for another person from your memories. Like now, as I look at him in the dim light, it's as if I'm seeing Gu Nanzhao, and as he looks at me, he's probably imagining what the man on the phone described, his deceased sister, Pei Yan. A car drives out from the villa area. The somewhat glaring headlights sweep across my face and then pass by. It was clearly my eyes that were stung, yet Pei Yan squinted his. In the depths of the night, his complexion seemed to grow even paler. 6. He remained standing there, not coming any closer. His voice lifted slightly as he asked, "Can't you walk anymore? Do you need me to carry you?" The streetlight was fragmented by tree shadows as I watched him in the interplay of light and shade, nodding, "All right." Pei Yan walked towards me and took off his overcoat. Gazing at the top of my head, he draped the coat over my shoulders. He took the things from my hands, turned his back, and crouched down in front of me. The moment I agreed, I already felt a twinge of regret. Seeing him like this, I worried whether he could still carry me on his back, so when I leaned onto his back, I was extra cautious, terrified he might collapse. The man seemed to be in a slightly better mood for once. Always appearing sickly and lethargic, he now let out a soft chuckle. "It's not that serious." He carried me on his back as he stood up, then said gently, "Let's go home." My eyes suddenly burned with unshed tears. Tears fell abruptly, landing on his shoulder. His steps seemed to hesitate slightly, as if he might have noticed. I bit my lip hard, making no sound. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. For many years in the past, countless times, Gu Nanzhao would also wait for me in the night. From afar, he would stand there calling anxiously, "Little sister, over here," as if afraid I wouldn't notice him and might run off and get lost. When I acted spoiled and stubborn, saying I couldn't walk anymore, he would also carry me on his back like this and say, "Let's go home." "He doesn't want me anymore," he said. "I'm not your brother," he said. "Make sure you understand this clearly, and don't bother me again." I lost my parents overnight, and the love of my elder brother. And because of that night, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. In my memories and dreams, that night's events repeat endlessly, the exact same scenario, with intensely real sensations, the shaking floor, the crashing chandelier, my parents holding me tight, repeating those words over and over, "Xiao Qiao, don't fall asleep, don't sleep, don't sleep." "That's a recording, Miss Gu, that's a recording." Gu Nanzhao furiously accused and questioned, then severe depression. The psychologist told me, "Let's talk to your brother." But at that time, our family suddenly encountered a major change. Just after reaching adulthood, Gu Nanzhao had to join the company, and his personality drastically changed due to immense pressure. He shouldn't have to endure greater sorrow and suffering because of my mental illness. I started thinking about those things again, painfully, uncontrollably. My body seemed to tremble, and I heard faint sobs. It might have been the wind. Or perhaps it was me crying. Pei Yan's voice sounded by my ear. "Stars." I tilted my head and looked at the sky, seeing only the pitch-black darkness of night. I replied with a trembling voice, "There are no stars." Pei Yan fell silent, until they finally reached outside the villa gate. He spoke again, "We're home, Xingxing." "Oh, he's calling someone." The young and promising CEO Pei, whose career is flourishing, once had a younger sister named Pei Xing, passing through the wrought iron gate. Pei Yan set me down. He turned to look at me, his brows relaxing as if he wanted to say something. Upon seeing my face clearly, his expression froze momentarily. One must always return to reality. He looked at me for a moment, quickly regained his composure, and his expression returned to normal. As we entered together, he gently asked me, "Would you like the fish braised or boiled?" I replied, "Boiled, please. Something lighter, given his health condition." He probably shouldn't eat anything too heavy or spicy, right? Wash vegetables, cook, and then eat. We ate the meal in unusual silence. Halfway through the meal, Pei Yan suddenly looked at me and said, "Actually, you and I." It seemed he couldn't bear to deceive me any longer. Carefully considering his words, I pretended not to hear it. After serving a bowl of fish soup, he spoke again. "It seems a bit too spicy. Should we use less chili next time?" There was a struggle in Pei Yan's eyes. After a long pause, he finally responded, "All right." He pushed the water glass toward me. "Then have some water, Nan Chiao." After finishing the meal, he tidied up the bedroom for me before returning to his own room to rest. Unable to sleep at night, I got up in the middle of the night and left the bedroom, wanting to go downstairs for a glass of water. Just as I stepped out, I faintly heard violent coughing coming from the adjacent bedroom. It seems there were also sounds of vomiting mixed in, continuously, incessantly. The sounds were terrifying to hear. I went over and knocked, but there was no response, only violent coughing and retching. I tried to open the door, and it wasn't locked. The door opened, and by the moonlight, I saw the man sitting on the sofa. A strong smell of smoke and alcohol hit me as his back was hunched in the dim light. Bending over the trash can at his feet, one hand gripping the sofa, his arm was trembling violently. I didn't turn on the light and walked over. The pale moonlight faintly illuminated the bloodstains on the carpet by his feet. In the late stages of heart failure, one may cough up blood. Smoking and drinking like this is practically suicidal. Those few white medicine bottles containing sleep aids were thrown in front of him, mixed with cigarettes and alcohol. One medicine bottle was opened, and all the pills spilled onto the coffee table. Perhaps he opened the bottle intending to take the medicine but then lost his grip. Hearing footsteps, he looked up at me. In a flustered hurry, he pulled open the drawer and haphazardly stuffed the medicine bottles and pills inside. 7. He also wanted to hide the cigarettes and alcohol, but probably realized I had already seen them. With blood still smeared at the corner of his mouth, he looked at me with dazed eyes, his expression full of agony. "I'm sorry, Big Brother shouldn't have acted this way." I sat silently beside him and asked, "Do you really want to die?" For a moment, I couldn't tell if I was asking him, or asking that question to myself, who had wanted to end my life countless times. "Do you really want to die that much? Is it really impossible to try living on?" Pei Yan looked at me blankly. After a long pause, he finally replied self-deceptively, "It's just because I have a terminal illness." Under the moonlight, I gazed at his face. What if heart failure could be treated by finding a compatible heart for transplant? Pei Yan's face trembled, but he didn't respond to me. After a long silence, I continued, "Hey, should we try to keep living? In this world, we who are no longer noticed by anyone, rather than dying silently, how about trying to live on? At least every Qingming festival, we can personally offer a stick of incense to the family members we've let down, at the very least. The family members who left because of us clearly wished for us to live well." Pei Yan's face trembled more and more violently. Raising his hands, he covered his face with both palms. His voice was filled with agony. "I've long lost the face to keep living. That year, she took her own life while gravely ill to spare me from paying exorbitant medical fees. So all these years, I've been working desperately to earn money, but it's no use now. It's no use anymore." In the night, his voice gradually turned into sobs. I whispered softly, "So, only death would truly make me unworthy of them." I told him, and I told myself. The clock struck midnight, and the faint light of dawn began to appear outside the window. After a long while, Pei Yan finally released his grip, looking at me with a sorrowful expression as he said, "So you really..." He didn't continue, but I understood what he meant. He knew it. I was indeed pretending, feigning that I had mistaken him for my brother. The answer is self-evident. I didn't answer, just stared into his eyes. "How about we try to find a compatible heart for you?" Pei Yan's expression was pained and confused. "Why are you helping me?" I responded, "Because if you can, keep holding on to life, then I, too, want to try living on, just as my parents risked their lives and hoped for." We gazed at each other in prolonged silence through the quiet night. As the sky gradually brightened, Pei Yan finally nodded. He said, "All right. But I'm afraid I can only disappoint you." I laughed and said, "Don't be so lacking in confidence. Miracles might happen. I lived like a walking corpse for 7 years, but now I've suddenly started finding things to do. Pei Yan's health was deteriorating day by day. It became difficult for him to go to the company again, but the matter of selling the company was also temporarily put on hold. His physical condition makes it difficult for him to travel around, contacting hospitals and medical institutions to find a compatible heart. Fortunately, apart from occasional mental health episodes, I don't have any other serious illnesses or injuries. I took on the important task of finding a heart for him. I worked almost every day from dawn to dusk, contacting renowned hospitals both domestically and abroad. To gain the hospital's attention, I donated some more money to them. Pei Yan and I weren't living lavishly, but fortunately, we were both relatively well off. Before my parents passed away, they left me a will with 100 million in savings and 30% of the company's shares. On minor New Year's Day, I was in the kitchen preparing the New Year's Eve dinner with Pei Yan, suddenly received a phone call from Norway. When I answered the phone, Pei Yan was washing vegetables by the sink. His health was deteriorating, and he could barely muster the strength to cook anymore, but he had already dismissed the previous housekeeper. He felt bad about leaving me to cook alone, so he insisted on helping out. Listening to the voice on the other end of the phone, I met Pei Yan's gaze as he turned from the sink. Perhaps we spent a considerable amount of money, or perhaps luck suddenly began to favor us. I clearly heard the intense pounding of my own heartbeat. The only thing that could make one feel anticipation and excitement wasn't just death. There was also new life, a new life for oneself, or one fought for others. I dropped my phone, overwhelmed with joy, and threw myself at him in an emotional outburst, hugging him tightly. Found it, Pei Yan, I found it. The man staggered slightly. He reached out, braced against the refrigerator behind him, then embraced me in return. He chuckled, his voice trembling with excitement just like mine. Thank you, Nan Xiao. With reddened eyes, I looked up at him earnestly and said, and thank you too. If it weren't for him. That day after I narrowly escaped death by falling into the river, only to be abandoned by Gu Nanzhao upon hearing him say, he's not my brother, I probably would have sought death once again. For the past 7 years, there's been a voice in my heart. It has whispered darkly to me countless times, Gu Nanzhao, die, just die. If you die, you won't dream anymore. If you die, you won't keep reliving that day. If you die, the pain will end. 8. And now, an additional voice occasionally emerges in my mind, carrying the tenderness and affection my parents once had. It says to me, Nan Xiao, try to save yourself, try to live on, just like how you saved Pei Yan. With a heart full of excitement, I said, if the surgery goes well, let's live well from now on. Okay. After a long pause, Pei Yan nodded. Yes, together, we'll both live well, for ourselves, and for our deceased family members. I began preparing for the arrangements to go abroad with Pei Yan for the heart transplant surgery. We agreed that if the surgery went smoothly, we'd consider settling there for some years. Gu Nanzhao no longer acknowledges me as his sister. There's probably nothing left tying me to this country anymore. I want to try living in a different place, hoping to no longer be haunted by nightmares every night, no longer endlessly contemplating suicide. After Pei Yan's surgery, he would also need several years of proper rest and recuperation. Norway's tranquil environment makes it ideal for convalescence. Once the decision was made, Pei Yan immediately contacted a real estate agency in Norway and purchased a house. However, the risks of heart transplantation remain enormous, with limited success rates. It would be best to find the most experienced and professional cardiac surgeon to perform the operation. Internationally renowned in this field is a Chinese-American professor surnamed Wei. I managed to inquire and finally learned that Professor Wei would be returning to the country by the end of the year. Went to a remote mountain village in Jiangqing to spend the new year with my elderly mother who refused to leave her hometown. Only staying for a few days, I couldn't reach him. So after much deliberation, I decided to try making the trip in person. When asking for a favor, speaking face-to-face shows more sincerity. Jiangqing had been experiencing heavy snowfall for several consecutive days. Pei Yan didn't feel comfortable letting me go alone, but couldn't stop me either. In the end, we both compromised. I booked 2 plane tickets, and he agreed to accompany me. The plane landed in Jiangqing. Then we transferred to a bus heading to the township. After arriving in the small town, the road to Professor Wei's village was closed due to heavy snow and ice. No vehicles could take us into the village. We could only find a small inn in the town and settled in temporarily. The inn had poor soundproofing. Late at night as I lay in bed, I heard Pei Yan's violent, painful coughing and retching again. He must have coughed up blood again. The hospital in Norway contacted me once more, advising us to go there as soon as possible to prepare for the transplant surgery. The snow outside the window continues to fall heavily, At the first light of dawn, I gritted my teeth and got up to leave. The route from the town to the village isn't complicated. I asked the innkeeper to draw me a map, then bundled up in thick cotton-padded clothes. Leaving the inn, I walked along the deserted icy road toward the village. It was nearly noon by the time I finally reached my destination. My entire body numb from the cold, a middle-aged man was sweeping snow in the yard, struggling forward. I looked at his face, then checked the photo on my phone. After confirming that Professor Wei was indeed the person before me, I instantly let out a long sigh of relief. My whole body trembled uncontrollably, my legs gave way, and I collapsed weakly, kneeling directly in the snow. Professor Wei was utterly startled by me and immediately dropped his broom to come help me up. He exclaimed in shock and concern, "Whose child is this, frozen to such a state?" Before I could speak, several more people emerged from the room. I recognized two familiar faces and froze momentarily. It was Gu Nanzhao and Linanen, the daughter of his business partner. As Linanen walked out, she called out to Professor Wei, "Uncle, who is it?" Gu Nanzhao emerged from behind her with a reproachful expression. "Put your clothes on properly, don't catch a cold." Strangely enough, ever since Gu Nanzhao said he wasn't my brother, I never went to see him again, yet somehow, I always inexplicably run into him. Gu Nanzhao looked at me collapsed on the ground, his eyes filled with fury. He strode through the snow with a livid expression. "Gu Nanzhao, have you lost your mind? I told you I'm not your brother. How dare you secretly follow me through this blizzard and frozen wilderness?" Can't blame him for misunderstanding. Coming to such a remote mountain hollow, if I said it was coincidence, it would indeed be hard to believe. Professor Wei said urgently, "Don't talk about that now. Nanzhao, quickly take off your jacket and wrap it around this young girl." Gu Nanzhao scowled as he reluctantly took off his coat and haphazardly draped it over me. His voice was laced with anger. "Come inside with me." As he spoke, he grabbed my arm firmly and pulled me toward the interior. I shivered for a long time before finally mustering the strength to get up. Then I reached out, laboriously pushed his hand away, and said, "I'm not here for you, Professor Wei. I came specifically to see you." As I spoke, I carefully took out the document folder I had tucked inside my clothes. Inside were Pei Yan's medical records. I explained my purpose, then pleaded with reddened eyes, "Please help us. The heart transplant surgery is simply too risky. We only have this one chance at life." Gu Nanzhao looked at me in disbelief. After a long while, he opened his mouth several times but couldn't utter a word. He probably couldn't comprehend how I could go to such lengths for a complete stranger. After a while, even a trace of fear seemed to surface in his expression. He stared fixedly at my face. "Gu Nanzhao, you wouldn't really." Professor Wei's phone rang. He tossed out a "let's talk inside first" before answering the call and walking in. I was terrified that once he went inside, I wouldn't be able to see him again. In a flustered panic, I tried to push Gu Nanzhao away so I could chase after him. Gu Nanzhao forcefully grabbed me, his expression furious. "Have you truly lost your mind? That's just a stranger, and the roads within 10 kilometers around this village are all closed. You're risking half your life just to find a doctor for that man." I desperately pushed his hand away. Watching Professor Wei walk in and disappear from sight, Linanen followed suit and entered as well. My eyes reddened with a mix of anger and anxiety, and in the heat of the moment, I blurted out, "That's not a stranger, Mr. Gu, you're the stranger to me." Gu Nanzhao's eyes turned bloodshot, finally unable to endure any longer. "That person isn't your brother at all. Our names differ by just one character, Gu Nanzhao. Don't you understand?" The force in his palm was too strong. No matter what I do, I can't break free. Finally giving up the futile struggle, I looked at him with some amusement. "Understand what? I should have known. Didn't you already tell me clearly, word by word?" Gu Nanzhao's expression froze, his thin lips trembling. "It's not like that, it's not." I wanted to say something more. In the corner of my eye, I suddenly saw that familiar figure behind him. That usually pale face now seemed to have lost its last trace of color. It was Pei Yan. He had actually come looking for me. The man was covered in snow from his long journey, his face etched with anxiety and exhaustion. When he saw me, his pale face relaxed with relief. Noticing Gu Nanzhao again, he seemed momentarily dazed before slowly lowering his gaze, gentle, desolate, uneasy. In my daze, I suddenly seemed to see Gu Nanzhao in his teens, hiding alone in his bedroom, quietly eating cake by himself. It's been too many years since I last saw that gentle side of Gu Nanzhao. Pei Yan's lowered gaze fell upon the snow-covered ground. He stood there for a while, lost in thought. He didn't call out to me, nor did he take another step. Gu Nanzhao said with a trembling voice, "Enough, this game ends here. You'll stay with me here first. When the snow melts, I'll take you back." "Understood." Pei Yan's hand hanging at his side, blue from the cold, suddenly trembled. He finally reacted. With stiff and slow movements, he turned around and laboriously walked back the way he came. It felt like needles piercing my heart. The pain was excruciating. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I cried out in panic, "Brother, I'm not Pei Yan's sister." But I knew very well that this form of address would soften his heart the most. With his current physical condition, it was already a struggle for him to make it this far. If he had to go back the same way, something bad would definitely happen. Pei Yan abruptly halted his steps, but his stiffened back remained turned away. Gu Nanjiao was thunderstruck, his eyes wide with fury as he glared at me. "Gu Nanjiao, what did you call him? Look clearly, look carefully. I'm your real brother." That frozen silhouette soon struggled to lift its feet again. Trudging back along the path it came, I fought desperately to push Gu Nanjiao away. "Let go, release me." Gu Nanjiao's eyes turned red, suddenly letting out a cold, reckless laugh. "Do you think a stranger would take you back for no reason? I've checked. He lost a sister years ago. She died when she was just a teenager." The figure in the distance abruptly stopped again. In the sudden gust of cold wind, the man stumbled awkwardly and fell heavily to the ground. In an instant, there was no more sound. My eyes turned red with rage as I cried out in terror, get away from me, let me go." I was already so close to saving him. I clearly heard him say he was willing to live on, and we found a compatible heart. Tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. Unable to break free from that iron-like grip, my body slid down as I knelt on the ground in despair. "Please, let me go. I need to save him." Gu Nanjiao clutched my hand desperately, yet it was as if he had seen something too terrifying. His face turned pale as he took a step back. He murmured in disbelief, "How could this be? How is this possible? Have you truly forgotten?" The man's face gradually paled before he suddenly crouched down, cupped my face, and drew close to me. "Brother is here. Xiao Qiao, what are you doing? Look at me, look carefully. I am your brother." In the corner of my vision, Pei Yan lay silently collapsed on the ground. I shook my head in fear. "You're not." Huge fear gradually surfaced in Gu Nanjiao's eyes. Xiao Qiao, I'm your brother. Have you really forgotten me?" I couldn't push him away. Gradually losing the strength to struggle, tears streamed down, yet she suddenly burst into laughter. "What kind of brother is this, Mr. Gu? You're my brother's friend. What's wrong? Have you forgotten? You also fell into the river. Are you having memory problems?" Gu Nanjiao clutched my face desperately, forcing me to look at him. His hands were trembling more and more violently. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with confusion. "Impossible. I won't believe it." Gradually, I began to lose the sound of his voice. In my vision, only that person lying in the snowstorm remained. Just days ago, he was gently telling me, "Let's both live well together," until Professor Wei, having finished the phone call, finally stepped out. His words, "Why haven't you come in yet?" barely left his lips. 10. Seeing the scene in the snow, he immediately shouted angrily, "What's going on here? Hurry up and save them. How can you joke about human lives?" All I could hear was a violent ringing in my ears, my vision blurred. Professor Wei quickly checked Pei Yan's condition, then with great effort helped him up and took him inside. As he passed by me and Gu Nanjiao was still gripping me tightly, unwilling to let go, angrily shouting, "First figure out who your real brother is, then we'll talk about saving him." Professor Wei couldn't free his hands, his face darkened with anger, and in frustration he simply kicked Gu Nanjiao hard. "Nonsense. Human lives are at stake. If you want to make trouble, at least pick the right time." Gu Nanjiao wasn't prepared for someone to strike, losing his balance and staggering sideways, momentarily releasing his grip on me. I immediately scrambled to my feet in panic, stumbling after Professor Wei as he rushed inside. I saw Pei Yan's face had already turned ashen, even his lips taking on a deathly bluish-gray hue. My hands trembled as I reached out, trying to feel his breath. Professor Wei spoke in a low voice, "Still alive." The overwhelming wave of terror and guilt that threatened to drown me finally subsided, at least temporarily. Pei Yan's condition was critical. Fortunately, Professor Wei had brought some medicine and medical equipment with him due to his elderly mother's poor health. He provided emergency treatment for Pei Yan and then administered an 4 drip. Pei Yan still hadn't woken up, but his breathing had stabilized. At night, I slept on a makeshift bed by his bedside, thinking this way makes it convenient to check on his condition and breathing at any time. Heart failure patients must absolutely avoid catching cold. After all the commotion during the day, I'm worried his condition might worsen late at night. With a heart transplant on the horizon, it's best to remain cautious until the dawn truly arrives. Professor Wei said worriedly, "Will you be comfortable sleeping like this? If not, I can come watch over him tonight." I immediately replied, "It's fine, I'm used to it." It makes no difference how I sleep. Professor Wei silently looked at me for a while, then suddenly spoke again. I remember you used to be quite delicate. I froze for a moment, feeling inexplicably embarrassed. You recognized me. Professor Wei sighed lightly. You've lost so much weight. I remember you used to have such a plump, fair face, and were particularly willful and mischievous, back then. Your parents and brother spoiled you so much, really. The words trailed off halfway, left ultimately unsaid. After a long pause, he finally asked again, did you have a falling out with your brother? I saw no reason to hide it and answered truthfully. He refuses to acknowledge me now. Professor Wei and I go way back when my parents were still alive. He had some friendship with my father, otherwise, I wouldn't have trekked nearly 10 kilometers through snow and ice to find him. No one is obligated to give up their rare rest time or time spent with their elderly mother, to return to work during New Year's Eve and Spring Festival to perform surgeries. I just thought, perhaps, if he doesn't agree, I could swallow my pride and remind him of the old ties between our families. Maybe he would consider some past affection. But forcing someone's hand is something I can't quite bring myself to do. Professor Wei didn't elaborate further on the private matters between me and Gunanzhao, nor did he ask about my relationship with Pei Yan. After a moment of contemplation, he spoke again. Heart transplant surgery has the lowest success rate among all organ transplants. As a doctor, I can only do my best. You need to be mentally prepared for all outcomes. I was overjoyed for a moment. I wanted to express my gratitude urgently, but was too overwhelmed to speak for a long while. Professor Wei said gently, get some rest early. You don't look well. You should find time to take care of your health. A compatible heart has been found, and the best doctor is ready. Lying in bed late at night, I gaze at the moonlight outside the window. Suddenly I feel that the light, which always seemed dull and gray before, appears exceptionally bright tonight, like the rising sun at dawn. It's been many years since I last felt such joy. Early the next morning, Pei Yan finally woke up. I told him about Professor Wei's agreement, and he was as delighted as I was. While I was talking to him, someone knocked on the bedroom door, and then it was pushed open. Gunanzhao stood outside with a stern face, his tone somewhat awkward. Go down and eat. I made breakfast. I just had an argument with him yesterday, and being around him was really quite awkward. But this was a remote mountain village, with all the surrounding roads blocked off. Regarding Pei Yan's condition, I can't take him away for the time being, so I'll have to shamelessly stay here for food and lodging first. I looked at Pei Yan and said, can you get out of bed? Let me help you. At the door, Gunanzhao spoke again. Professor Wei said he should stay in bed and rest quietly. I've asked the housekeeper to bring the meal upstairs. Let him eat in his room. As he spoke, the nanny entered through the door carrying a meal tray and helped set up a small dining table on the bed. Pei Yan turned to me gently and said, I can manage on my own. You go ahead. Gunanzhao sneered at the doorway. What's the problem? He's not missing any limbs. Does he need to be fed? He always speaks so harshly. I went downstairs, and he brought out breakfast. Neither Linen nor Professor Wei were around. They'd probably already eaten when my parents were still alive. Gunanzhao and I would walk home from school together, and he often cooked for me. Back then, I was particularly picky, and he knew my tastes best. After my parents passed away, I never got to eat his cooking again. 11. The company always had endless work, and Gunanzhao resented me, no longer wanting to have meals with me. I sat down at the dining table, silently eating the fried eggs and toast in front of me, with a cup of warm soy milk by my hand. The eggs were fried golden on both sides. In the corner of my eye, I saw a soft-boiled egg placed before Gunanzhao. I'm allergic to milk and don't like undercooked eggs either. We've been arguing a lot these years, but it seems he's always remembered many things. The vast dining room was enveloped in deathly silence. I suddenly realized that my brother, who used to share everything with me, now sits beside me, only making me feel extremely awkward and embarrassed. Sitting so close while eating, I truly don't know what to say to him. I could only force conversation. The eggs seem a bit burnt. Gunanzhao responded with a dissatisfied "Oh, didn't you say you liked it more well done?" He stood up and took away the plate in front of me. The roads are frozen shut in this bitter cold. We're lucky to have anything to eat at all. Yet you're still being picky. He returned to the kitchen, followed by the sound of the stove being relit. Within minutes, a fresh plate of fried eggs was brought out again, without even looking at me. He tossed the plate back in front of me. Last time, if you're still picky, make it yourself. I suddenly felt a lump in my throat, subconsciously lowered my head and continued eating. Gunanzhao's voice was displeased. That's enough acting. The weather cleared up today. The road should be unblocked by afternoon. After finishing the meal, get ready to come back with me. It felt like a lump of cotton was stuck in my throat. For a moment, The words of agreement almost spilled from my lips. In this world, we truly only have each other left as our sole family. Before I could speak, he glanced upstairs again, his voice laced with loathing. That man isn't short of money, don't interfere with him anymore, let him find someone to pick him up himself, he can figure out his own treatment, stop meddling with these ill-intentioned. So, he didn't just call me here for breakfast. The premise of taking me back is making me abandon Pei Yin. The food I was chewing suddenly became difficult to swallow. I set down my chopsticks neither lightly nor heavily, raised my eyes, and looked at the person beside me. How is he ill-intentioned? Gunanjiao's rarely softened expression quickly darkened again. Do you still want to defend him? Traveling thousands of miles here for a stranger, walking for hours in the freezing snow to seek medical help for him. As he spoke, anger rose within him again. Look at yourself, what have you become? Did you care this much even when our parents passed away? The knife that had been stabbing my heart for 7 years suddenly felt like someone grabbed its handle again, twisting the blade inside my chest. I abruptly stood up, letting out a cold, bitter laugh. Emotions finally burst through the dam. I no longer wished to pretend with him. What do I look like now? Gunanjiao, you were the one who told me he's my brother. Who told me to stop bothering you and to go with him, still not satisfied. So what do you expect? What should I be like, and what should he be like? Didn't everything go as he wished? Gunanjiao's thin lips trembled. After a fleeting trace of guilt flashed in his eyes, it quickly turned into raging anger. You were indeed pretending. I stopped avoiding and met his gaze directly. Yes, I was pretending. But you were the one who told me to get lost first. For 7 years you were unhappy with me clinging to the Gu family, and now you're unhappy that I've left. 7 years ago I had a fight with my parents and stayed at home. I couldn't predict there would be an earthquake later. They passed away because of me, and I'm more heartbroken than anyone. So, what? What else do you want from me? For 7 years. I dreamt of that day every single night. That recording was the thing I feared most, yet I still played it on loop countless times during countless sleepless nights, like some form of self-torture. The moment I close my eyes, all I see is my parents covered in blood. I'm afraid of the dark, afraid of enclosed spaces. I sleep with the lights on, yet suffer from endless sleepless nights, nervous exhaustion, depressive mood. If death could atone for sins, I'd dream of nothing but dying. But my life was saved by them risking their own. I tried countless times, yet retreated at the last moment every time. Living feels like betraying them, but dying would betray them even more. I live a life worse than death, yet cannot die. Countless times, I deliberately wandered in pitch-black alleyways, like a madman. I even fantasized that some desperate criminal would suddenly appear and stab me to death. I looked at Gunanjiao, my eyes gradually turning completely red. Why don't you tell me? What exactly do you want from me? Or better yet, why don't you just kill me? Gunanjiao looked at me in disbelief, as if he was seeing a stranger. A strange emotion flashed in his eyes, somewhat resembling the expression my once doting elder brother used to show. It was the same expression he'd wear whenever I occasionally felt wronged in the past, tender yet helpless. But the current Gunanjiao would no longer feel any heartache for me. The emotion I saw quickly fading in his eyes was probably just my illusion. His tone was full of disgust and cruelty. Kill you, Gunanjiao? Would your parents come back to life if you died? Someone as willful as you who caused their parents' death should live in eternal suffering. My chest felt like a gaping hole had been torn open, every breath carrying the metallic tang of blood. After a long while, I finally managed to calm down with great effort and nodded. Fine, do as you please. I won't be going back with you. I walked past him and went straight upstairs. Behind me, Gunanjiao remained silent in anger for a long time. Then suddenly, he called out to me, Xiao Qiao, a voice too long unheard, gentle, abrupt, and strange. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. After over 20 years as siblings, I knew him all too well. A bad premonition welled up in my chest. I halted my steps and turned back to look at him. Seeing the smile in his eyes, I spoke again. Are you so sure Professor Wei will treat him? I frowned. What do you mean? Gunanjiao clearly had a plan in mind, appearing confident of victory as he walked unhurriedly up to me. You might not be aware, but Professor Wei is famously known throughout the region as a devoted son. His mother isn't quite lucid these days, and I've spent quite some time chatting with her recently. If I were to persuade her, she might say she truly can't bear to part with her son. Can you believe Professor Wei would really abandon his elderly mother alone during the new year? I can't believe he could say such things. It felt like all the blood in my body rushed to my head. By the time I came to my senses, my raised hand had already delivered a fierce slap across the face of the person before me. Gunanjiao's unfinished words abruptly stopped. His mocking and cold smile didn't even have time to fade. Frozen on his face, A burning pain radiated from my palm. He's my brother, we've fought and quarreled since childhood, but being slapped in the face like this was something that had never happened before, no matter what. When I realized what I had done, I wasn't sure whether I regretted it or not. I only felt that uncontrollable rage rapidly destroying my reason. Furious, I glared at him. You're truly insane, that was a human life. I refused to say another word to him. He makes me feel like a stranger, even terrifying. I went upstairs and returned to the bedroom to take care of Pei Yan. Gunanja didn't follow me anymore. After a heavy snowfall, the weather cleared up. In the afternoon, the road was temporarily reopened, allowing slow traffic to pass. Pei Yan could no longer delay and had to pack quickly to go abroad. Whether Gunanja would actually persuade Professor Wei to change his mind or not. 12. I've already done everything I could. I thought before going abroad, I should at least say goodbye to Gunanja. But now, it seems unnecessary. He despises me, and probably wouldn't care about my departure. Moreover, he harbors unwarranted hostility towards Pei Yan, and I fear that if he learns of our whereabouts, he might cause trouble again. In the worst-case scenario, I'm worried it might affect Pei Yan's transplant surgery. Having made up my mind, I waited until Pei Yan's condition improved slightly and he could get out of bed. Early the next morning, I managed to contact the small town's innkeeper and paid him to arrange a car for me. The bus took nearly an hour to arrive. When I received the call and went downstairs with Pei Yan, Professor Wei happened to be sitting on the living room sofa. Only when I reached the ground floor did I notice a suitcase standing beside him. Seeing us come down, Professor Wei put down his newspaper and stood up, saying, "Let's go." I froze upon hearing this. "Are you heading out too, by any chance?" Professor Wei's face darkened. "Wasn't it you who requested me as the lead surgeon? What? Are you denying it after just one night?" I was both shocked and delighted. "You can set off right now. I heard he rarely returns to his hometown throughout the year. This time when I came back home, I stayed for less than 3 days. Besides, what Gunanjiao said to me yesterday, I thought," Professor Wei said solemnly. "What's wrong? Did you really think my old mother would make a scene about not wanting to part with me and force me to stay?" I was momentarily speechless. Professor Wei bid farewell to his mother and gave instructions to the caregiver. Only then did he turn to me and say, "Let's go. I actually wish I could stay home a couple more days. The old lady is very anxious and urged me to hurry and help treat your illnesses. Let's leave together." When we went out, I still didn't see Gunanjiao and Linen anywhere, got in the car, and it drove away. As I left, I instinctively glanced out the car window a couple more times. Professor Wei spoke up. He went with Linen to buy food in town. The heavy snow blocked the roads for days, and Linen kept insisting on going out to play. I let out an awkward "oh" and hastily averted my gaze. After paying, the car took us directly to the city airport, passing through the town market. I suddenly spotted Gunanjiao and Linen among the scattered stalls and crowds. They were standing in front of a sugar figurine stall, where the vendor handed a freshly made candy sculpture to Linen. The girl said something, then shoved the milk tea in her hand into Gunanjiao's grasp, reached out, fished out his wallet from his coat pocket, and handed over the money. For many years in the past, I was just like this too. Dragged Gunanjiao out shopping, then dug into his pockets to pay the bill. The car sped away, the scene flashing past my eyes in a hurry. A moment later, my phone buzzed. I took it out to see a WeChat message from Gunanjiao, abrupt and oddly brief. The message read, "What to eat?" A few more photos of the stalls. The clearest one shows a stall selling handmade osmanthus cakes. Suddenly I remembered that late night many years ago. I was fussing about wanting to eat osmanthus cakes. Teenaged Gunanjiao scared me by saying that children who eat sweet cakes at night will grow cavities all over their teeth, yet he still sneaked out late at night, returning with warm osmanthus cakes tucked in his arms. Back then, he said, last time, yesterday, as we had breakfast together, he fried me another egg and also said, last time, and now, through the car window, I watched that rapidly disappearing figure behind me. I think, perhaps this is truly the last time. I put away my phone without replying to that message. Upon arriving at the airport, just before boarding, the Norwegian real estate company called Pei Yan again. They asked about our approximate arrival time in Norway to finalize the housing purchase contract. After hanging up the phone, Professor Wei nearby looked surprised. Are you planning to settle down there? I informed Professor Wei about Pei Yan's plan to stay there for a few years of recuperation after the surgery. I want to give it a try too, live there for a few years. Professor Wei remained silent for a long while before sighing. If I'd known it would be like this, I probably shouldn't have deceived Nanjiao. I didn't quite understand. He further explained, I noticed he harbors great hostility towards Mr. Pei, and I was concerned he might affect Mr. Pei's treatment progress. This morning I lied to him, saying Mr. Pei's condition would definitely keep him bedridden for 2 or 3 days. And you certainly wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. Only then did he agree to accompany Linen into town. Professor Wei finished speaking and sighed softly. Since you plan to stay there long term, aren't you going to call him before boarding? After a brief hesitation, I shook my head. No need. Over these years, the phrase I've heard him say most often is, Gunanqiao, why was it our parents who died instead of you? Maybe I shouldn't fight anymore. The boarding announcement came over the PA system. The phone in my pocket seems to be vibrating. I didn't pay any more attention to it, got up and entered the boarding gate. Gunanqiao felt uneasy. Ever since leaving Professor Wei's house with Linen, he had been feeling inexplicably unsettled. He was absolutely certain that if Pei Yan couldn't get out of bed for a few days, Gunanqiao wouldn't be able to leave. Yet he felt inexplicably uneasy, for no reason, intensely so. Linen was buying things at the stall. The heavy snow has just melted, yet the biting cold wind still lingers outside. But with New Year's Eve approaching, everyone has returned home for the celebrations. The streets are bustling with vendors and crowds, adorned everywhere in vibrant red, brimming with joyous festivity. Gunanqiao recalls again how every past New Year, he would return to their hometown with his parents and Gunanqiao to visit Grandma. Later, Grandma passed away. And then Mom and Dad were gone too. He and Gunanqiao stopped loving the New Year celebrations after that. When did it all begin? He never properly spoke another word to Gunanqiao again. That always lively and mischievous little sister who caused trouble everywhere. That little sister who would cry heartbroken tears and quarrel with parents after catching him eating birthday cake alone. She grew increasingly silent, increasingly lifeless, becoming indifferent to everything. Showing little interest in anything, they grew increasingly distant from each other. More and more, they became like unfamiliar strangers. So, when Gunanqiao suddenly discovered that his younger sister had gone home with that complete stranger, she was chatting and laughing with that man, she was heartbroken and concerned about that person's illness. Despite the heavy snow blocking the roads, despite swallowing her pride, she was willing to risk half her life to find the best doctor for that person. That's why he felt such uncontrollable rage, or perhaps, it wasn't uncontrollable rage after all. He just doesn't want to admit it. He's jealous, insanely jealous, even her own blood brother. She hasn't cared about for so many years. 13. That's why he spoke so thoughtlessly in the heat of the moment. To say such childish and absurd words as asking Dr. Wei not to treat Pei Yan. Gunanqiao immediately slapped him across the face. See, as expected, in her eyes now. Her own blood brother is less important than a stranger she's only met a few times. She actually believed he could be despicable enough to prevent a doctor from treating patients. Gunanqiao, hated how her insistence on staying home had led to their parents' deaths in the earthquake. But what he hated even more was how her eyes no longer saw him, and so, he hated that man too. Hate the man who made Gunanqiao care so much in just a few short days. He couldn't accept it. Even if that statement about not being her brother came from his own mouth, he could vent his anger momentarily by pretending to abandon Gunanqiao, yet he couldn't accept that she would really leave. Linen was still saying something beside him. Gunanqiao stood by the bustling street, lost in thought. Those chaotic, contradictory, and twisted emotions engulfed him like a hurricane. He felt uncomfortable, suffocated. Linen took the wallet from his pocket. The elderly street vendor didn't have a payment QR code. Gunanqiao let her be, just wanting to finish quickly and return earlier. A car passed by his side. Out of the corner of his eye, he glimpsed an unfamiliar car. Through the car window, he couldn't see what was inside. How strange. He actually felt as if he'd seen Gunanqiao. Her expression was calm, deathly still. Through the car window, he was also looking at him. He clearly couldn't see, yet he felt that he had seen. It was almost an instinctive reaction in that instant. He pushed Linen aside and chased after him. A rapidly departing car is impossible to catch up with on foot. Soon, the car disappeared from Gunanqiao's sight. Gunanqiao halted his hurried steps, momentarily dazed. It was just an unfamiliar car. He really ought to get his head examined. Linen hurried to catch up and asked him curiously, "What's wrong?" Gunanqiao snapped back to reality and replied, "It's nothing. I must have seen wrong." "Are you done shopping? Let's go back." Linen nodded. "All right." She came to town not to buy things for herself. Old Mrs. Wei is advanced in age and suffers from intermittent dementia. When confused, she often thinks she's still a child and wants to eat sugar figurines. With the roads finally unblocked, Linen came to town to buy supplies for her grandmother. Before Gunanqiao left, he couldn't resist taking a few photos of the street stalls and sending them to Gunanqiao. Like a stone sinking into the sea, There was no response. The unease in his heart grew stronger. As they got in the car, Linen said apologetically, "I'm sorry for taking up your time, but Uncle was really strange today. I already said I could come by myself. I'm old enough now. Is it really necessary to have someone accompany me when going out in broad daylight?" Gunanjao's hand on the steering wheel suddenly trembled. That lingering unease that had been haunting him seemed to suddenly find a trace of its origin. He recalled this morning when Linen went out alone, about to drive to town, Professor Wei's strange expression, insisting despite Linen's refusal that Gunanjao accompany her. Gunanjao suddenly thought, perhaps it shouldn't have been like this, he shouldn't have come. Was it really true what Professor Wei said, the one who insisted on driving him away, that Pei Yan wouldn't be able to get out of bed for 2 or 3 days? The unease in Gunanjao's heart quickly turned into panic and fear. The accelerator underfoot was pressed down continuously, yet he felt an extremely bizarre sensation. He wasn't getting closer to Gunanjao, he was moving further away from her. He remembered again that unfamiliar car that had driven past him. Suddenly, labored and rapid breaths began escaping from the throat. Shouldn't have left. He was wrong, so wrong. The car sped homeward. When returning to the Wei household, apart from old Mrs. Wei and the caregiver, there was no one else left at home. Gunanjao searched upstairs and downstairs, and even though he didn't want to believe it, he had to realize that Gunanjao was gone. Professor Wei had lied to him. Did you go back to Beijing? Yes, the only option is to return to Beijing. Beijing has the best hospitals and medical facilities in the country. Professor Wei must have gone to Beijing with them to treat Pei Yan. It doesn't matter. Once he returns to Beijing, he can still see Gunanjao. Gunanjao tried to console himself, but cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. He went to Old Lady Wei's bedroom and asked casually, forcing calmness, "Have they gone to North City?" Old Lady Wei was unusually clear-headed, sitting by the window basking in the sunlight. Hearing this, she looked at him in surprise and said, "North City, they went abroad to treat that gentleman, didn't you know? They say Xiao Qiao and that person even planned to settle down there." Gunanjao's phone remained on the WeChat chat interface in his hand. Above, he had sent photos to Gunanjao, but there was no response from the other side. Upon hearing this, the phone in his hand suddenly fell to the ground. Gunanjao couldn't find his younger sister. He couldn't reach her and couldn't find out which country she had gone to. He suddenly remembered again when Linen took the wallet from his coat pocket. He inexplicably felt that Gunanjao was looking at him. Perhaps it wasn't an illusion. They were each other's only remaining family in this world. It was probably a premonition from the unseen. He felt her presence before him, then sensed her departure. Yet only now did he come to understand. In this time that was already destined to be too late. At that moment, Gunanjao saw Linen take the wallet from his pocket. Such an intimate gesture. What is she thinking in her heart? For so many years, Gunanjao intentionally maintained close contact with Linen, knowing full well it would upset Gunanjao. He still deliberately did it. He resented Gunanjao and intentionally wanted to make her unhappy. But it's not just because of this. He approached Linen also because she was Professor Wei's niece, 14, over these years. Since her parents left, Gunanjao always seemed lifeless. Gunanjao once secretly followed her to the hospital. He heard her tell the doctor that she often felt chest tightness, shortness of breath, and difficulty breathing. Gunanjao worried that she might have a heart problem. He wanted to consult the most specialized Professor Wei in this field for detailed advice, but since his parents passed away, Professor Wei and the Gu family had grown somewhat distant. Gunanjao felt awkward again. Unwilling to admit outright that he sought out the doctor out of concern for Gunanjao, so he thought of reconnecting with Professor Wei through Linen. Then, at the right moment, he could casually bring it up. He wanted to ask about Gunanjao's condition and have Professor Wei take a look, but Gunanjao would never know about these awkward and twisted thoughts of his. She would probably only think that he had truly abandoned her as a sister and recognized Linen as his new sister instead. Gunanjao's heart ached terribly. He realized that it seemed he truly couldn't find his way back to Gunanjao anymore. It seemed like he had lost her since a long, long time ago, that once willful, clingy sister who always pestered him mischievously. It seemed he had already lost her for a very long time. Gunanjao returned to Beijing, searched all day, but found nothing. He wanted to call the police, but the police informed him that Gunanjao was an adult. She had the right to make her own decisions and go anywhere. Gunanjao suddenly remembered that Gunanjao was only 15 when their parents passed away. He quarreled with her for 7 years, then spent 7 more in a cold war. He always felt that not much time had passed. He was only using his hatred for Gunanjao to vent the pain of suddenly losing his parents. But now, on New Year's Eve, He stood on the bitterly cold street. Suddenly it occurred to me that perhaps Gunanxiao, perhaps she wasn't entirely at fault after all. Maybe he had heard others say that 7 years ago on that day, she insisted on staying home to prepare for his 18th birthday celebration. It might not necessarily have been a lie to him. Gunanxiao looked utterly bewildered as he made another call to Professor Wei. This time, the call actually went through. Gunanxiao was momentarily overjoyed, asking with a trembling voice in panic, "Professor Wei, you know where Xiao Qiao is, don't you? Please tell me." The voice on the other end remained calm as it interrupted him. "Nanjiao, I called to tell you this. Given your behavior these past few days, I definitely won't tell you a single thing about Nanxiao and Mr. Pei's whereabouts, so don't waste your effort." Gunanjiao was burning with anxiety. "I promise, I won't interfere with any of your treatments when I come. I was just really worried about her. She also had heart problems. I once heard her tell the doctor that she often felt short of breath." Professor Wei said solemnly, "I've reviewed her medical records. Her heart is perfectly healthy. The shortness of breath was caused by her frequently recurring depression over these years." Gunanjiao instinctively retorted, "How could that be? She's been perfectly fine all these years. There's no way she could have any psychological." The words trailed off abruptly. "Really, has she been perfectly fine?" He recalled how Gunanxiao had always appeared lifeless over these 7 years. His expression was pale, as if he had lost interest in everything. He no longer enjoyed talking, no longer cared about him, even when accused or questioned. His expression remained utterly indifferent. Occasionally arguing with him would always end with her powerless silence in the end. Gunanjiao just kept thinking that Gunanxiao might be ill. He wanted to find Professor Wei to examine her, yet he never properly considered that her condition was more likely psychological trauma. "Over there," Professor Wei continued, "post-traumatic stress disorder, severe depression. It started 7 years ago, Nanjiao. She never wanted to tell you because she couldn't bear to see you suffer from your parents' passing, afraid it would cause you more pain. What about you? Do you know that she also lost her parents and is grieving?" The voices over there gradually grew distant and faint in my ears. "You've been venting all your pain and hatred onto her. And what about her? Her guilt and suffering, the despair of feeling her parents die right beside her. After all these years, who can I vent to?" All the emotions that couldn't be vented could only be suppressed in the heart, accumulating into an increasingly heavy illness. Gunanjiao suddenly felt unsteady on his feet. The other side stated bluntly, 7 years ago, there were clear group chat records. Nanxiao stayed home to prepare your birthday banquet. She couldn't foresee the future or predict that earthquake. All these years, you truly didn't believe. Or were you unwilling to accept that your parents' deaths were also connected to you, so you choose to cover your eyes and condemn Nanxiao's willful actions for causing your parents' death? That paper-thin layer of window screen was finally torn apart. Gunanjiao felt it, the bloody, throbbing pain in his chest. He just couldn't accept it. No one, absolutely no one, to truly bear the guilt for the death of one's parents. It was just an accidental tragedy. Professor Wei sighed lightly. "Over these years, Nanxiao's suffering has far surpassed yours. You say you're very worried about her, but have you really ever been concerned for her? Have you ever thought that she might not be able to bear it either?" Gunanjiao gradually could no longer hear any sound from that side. What began exploding in his ears were the cruel words he had spoken countless times over the years. /Gunanxiao, why wasn't it you who died? /Gunanxiao, how dare you still be alive? 15. Over these years, she had so many accidental food poisonings, accidental slips into water, accidental falls from cliffs. Were they really just accidents? No, he couldn't accept his parents' death. He plunged the blade, countless times, into the heart of the sister his parents had desperately tried to protect, stabbing the last remaining family he had in this world, venting all the pent-up resentment and anguish that had nowhere else to go. Yet they never truly considered that they should have relied on each other, should have licked each other's wounds, never properly realized that years she was only 15, in these 7 years, she suffered more than anyone, living a life worse than death. Gunanjiao trembled as he covered his face, weeping uncontrollably. He thought she wouldn't come back. She settled abroad, finally deciding to completely abandon him. He lost his parents, and finally, he himself lost the sister who had always adored him. The night Pei Yan and I arrived in Norway and completed the hospitalization procedures. Perhaps being in a foreign land made me instinctively uneasy. Lying on the hospital cot, I had that nightmare again after many days. Trapped under the rubble, I heard my parents' gentle voices from the recording. In another blink, I saw scarlet blood, like a winding viper. It emerged from beneath the ruins, menacingly and slowly submerging the tops of my feet. blood red, surging. As my vision wavered, I saw 2 bodies unearthed from the ruins. It was Gunanjiao's hysterical accusation. Gunanjiao, why wasn't it you who died? In the illusion, my blood-covered parents asked me with disappointment and sorrow. Xiao Qiao, why did you have to stay at home? Why did you have to cause mom and dad's death? Xiao Qiao, weren't mom and dad good enough to you? Xiao Qiao, why? I woke up from a nightmare. The ward was deathly silent. The beep-beep sounds of medical equipment unusually clear, like countless nights before. I startled awake, sat up in bed, and gazed out the window, feeling confused about why I'm still alive. I shouldn't be alive anymore. Pei Yan was sleeping soundly on the adjacent hospital bed. With the transplant surgery approaching, he needed the most adequate rest and the calmest, most relaxed state of mind. This is the most critical period of time. I should stay here with him. It's agreed. But that little voice inside me started pulling at me again, viciously and rudely. I couldn't control myself and left the ward. Norway's winter is equally cold. I walked onto the rooftop, the howling wind enveloping me, calling to me, luring me to the edge of the rooftop. It said that with just one leap, I could see my parents. I can confess, atone, and no longer endure endless suffering. I walked to the edge, reaching my hand over the rooftop railing into the impenetrable fog below. For a fleeting moment, I lost control, lifting my foot, ready to step over the railing. Suddenly, a gentle voice called from behind, Nan Xiao. The ferocious little demon in my heart immediately fled in panic, like a thief afraid of being caught. I pulled my consciousness back and turned around. From a distance, I looked at that person. Pei Yan wasn't in a hurry to approach, just stood there and asked me gently, "Are you here to look at the stars?" The doctor said there's a test report that needs to be signed and confirmed by a family member. As you know, I don't have any family left, so I'll have to trouble you. He was lying. It's 3 in the morning, only the night shift nurse remains. But then he said he had no family left. The heart transplant surgery will begin soon. That's probably his only chance to keep living. Pei Yan looked at me, and after a long moment, his voice rose slightly. Hey, I promise you, after the surgery goes well, I'll live properly. The wind lifted the hem of his clothes and tousled his bangs. I remembered again. The day I first met him, he took me home, then lied about going out to buy groceries. He lied. He went to the riverside, but in the end, still bought fish and came home with me. We stood at opposite ends of the rooftop, gazing at each other across the heavy, deathly silence of the night. After a long while, I heard him speak loudly again. Hey, Nan Xiao, we promised to live well together. Living alone is really quite meaningless. My tears suddenly began to fall. The wind at the rooftop's edge carries away my tears. My hair strands blur my vision before being swept aside by the gust. I smiled at him. I came just to see the stars, but forgot the weather was bad. Didn't get to see any. 16. Pei Yan stepped forward, walking toward me. He stopped before me, then extended his hand saying, "Come down, I'll help you." Only then did I realize I had reached the highest point of the rooftop. This was an elevated platform. The only gap on the rooftop, there was no guardrail ahead at all. Just one more step forward, and I would step into the thick fog, plunging into the abyss. I looked at his outstretched hand, where several bruises from needle punctures still marked the back. Near the wrist, one spot showed blood that had only just dried. It must have been from when he pulled out the 4-needle to come find me, leaving the wound fresh. For a moment, I was lost in thought, then reached out and grasped his hand. He immediately raised his other hand, wrapped it around my waist, and carried me down from the high platform. He quickly, firmly, yet gently embraced me. I heard his voice by my ear, calm yet trembling. Nan Xiao, we're both alive and well. After that night, for many consecutive days, I didn't have any more nightmares. Pei Yan bought the house and signed the purchase agreement. He sat on the bed, opened the interior photos on his phone, and discussed with me. This bedroom will be reserved for you, and we'll add a balcony later. Open the door, and you'll see the beach and the ocean. There was anticipation in his eyes, like starlight in the deep night. I thought, once his surgery was truly over without complications, there'd be no reason for us to keep living together. I'd find another place to live, and look for a job too, but I couldn't bear to refuse him at this moment. So I nodded first and said, "All right." Pei Yan was very delighted. He went on to tell me how his late sister had always wanted to visit Norway when she was still alive. Here there are polar nights and auroras, a 15,000-kilometer coastline, and the Norwegian wood from the writer's works. He said with great longing, "After the surgery is over, let's settle here for a few years. Would you like to accompany me on a journey to explore and see everything properly?" After just a few days in Norway, his complexion grew even paler, holding back tears. I nodded and said, okay. Pei Yan felt somewhat apologetic and said, do you have any other places you'd like to go? I can accompany you there too. Could we perhaps? He suddenly gave a light cough, perhaps feeling unwell. His face flushed slightly red. In the end, the words that followed were left unsaid. I responded, yes, there are many places I want to go. After your surgery is over, I'll tell you one by one. Pei Yan nodded with a smile. All right, late at night. Pei Yan started vomiting again. After throwing up every bit of food he'd eaten, he coughed up blood once more. This time, it was more like vomiting blood. I have a feeling that without a heart transplant soon, he might not last much longer. Outside the ward, Professor Wei suddenly rushed in. The donor has suddenly passed away. Quick, get to the operating room and prepare for the heart transplant. To ensure the viability of the donor heart, the heart transplant surgery must be completed within 12 hours of the donor's death. Professor Wei quickly arranged for medical staff to come and wheel Pei Yan into the operating room, then hurried to the operating room to change into surgical gowns. Pei Yan lay on the gurney, and as he left the ward, he reached out and gently grasped the back of my hand. My palms were sweaty with nervousness, but he instead smiled reassuringly at me. Don't worry, it'll be fine. I escorted him into the operating room. From the side of the deceased donor, an unusual commotion suddenly erupted. Pei Yan had already entered the operating room. I rushed to the donor's side, only to see the donor's family members wielding knives to obstruct the medical staff. The death of a loved one caused family members to become emotionally distraught and lose control. We refuse to donate the heart. I want my son buried whole, so his next life will have a healthy and complete body. The consent form for heart donation has been signed by both the donor and family members, but now the family has just lost a loved one and is emotionally vulnerable, suddenly changing their mind. Just as a loved one has passed away, their heart is about to be removed. For most ordinary people, this would likely be something difficult to bear in the moment, with the heart transplant being time-sensitive. Some doctors grew anxious and spoke without thinking. The dead cannot be brought back to life. And there is no afterlife after death. A single sentence, like a drop of water falling into a pot of boiling oil. The family members who had been hesitantly blocking the way in small groups suddenly all rushed forward, shielding the deceased. They looked at me and the medical staff with grief and indignation. Everyone has an afterlife. How dare you curse my loved ones to have no afterlife, all for the sake of others' lives. My mind was filled with nothing but a violent ringing. With family members blocking the way, no one could force the issue. The donor's body was taken away by the family. I walked out of the ward and gazed at the distant sea through the window at the end of the corridor. The surging waves carried the winter snowflakes. Pei Yan was still lying in the operating room. He is waiting for rebirth. It was me who told him, try to live on. He agreed, once again, in hopeful anticipation. All in vain. Pei Yan never got to wait for a second compatible heart. The new year passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was the Lantern Festival. He began using a breathing apparatus. Having grown so thin he was practically just skin and bones. In the morning, I borrowed the hospital kitchen to make tang yuan, which we ate together. When my parents were still alive, they told me that eating glutinous rice balls would bring peace and safety. Pei Yan only ate half before vomiting it all up in an instant. What came out was still crimson red, for him. Peace ultimately remained nothing but a distant hope. That night, he coughed up blood severely, suffered respiratory failure, and was rushed into the emergency room. In his final moments, the doctor came out and called me in. I leaned by the bedside and held his bony hand, 17, with great effort. He told me he had notarized his will, leaving all his property to me after his death, as if afraid I might refuse. His voice trembled with unease. I don't have any other skills. Back then, I couldn't save my own sister. Now that I've saved some money, I can't give it to her anymore. Please, let me pretend it's reaching her hands. After I die, can I have a peaceful dream? Please, in this world, perhaps no one else could understand each other's endless self-blame and guilt as deeply as we do. For the dead loved ones, for our own helplessness. In my blurred vision, I nodded, mumbling. He said to me again, if you ever get sick in the future, you must get proper treatment and live well. I thought he must have mistaken me for someone else again. His words were spoken to that sister who once chose to end her own life to save him money when she was gravely ill. The hand I was holding suddenly turned and gave mine a weak, gentle squeeze. I heard his words, growing fainter yet spoken with great effort. No mistake, Nan Xiao. I've never mistaken you for someone else. It means Nan Xiao should live well. I felt somewhat sad, but could no longer cry. During these days, I've been worried his surgery might not go smoothly, often hiding in the stairwell, quietly shedding tears. But now, expectations dashed, facing his impending death. yet I no longer had tears left, after Pei Yan passed away. I filed a lawsuit against his father who never raised him or his sister but came to claim the inheritance. That man wanted money. I hired private investigators and lawyers, gathered evidence of his fraudulent crimes, and sent him to prison. I then sorted through Pei Yan's belongings and found a photo of him and his sister in his wallet, carrying his ashes, and that photo. I continued to fulfill the promise we made together. I stayed in Norway for over half a year. I turned off my phone and hired a guide. I witnessed the polar night and auroras, and beheld 15,000 kilometers of coastline. I saw the Sonafjord, that place called Norwegian Wood, the world of fairy tales that Pei Xing had once read about and yearned for with all her heart. One day, the tour guide looked at the ashes in my hand and asked, "Is this your beloved?" I shook my head and said, "No, he was more than a lover or a friend, an old acquaintance." I returned to the country, to Beijing. More than half a year later, on the day I landed back home, I turned on my phone and received a call from Norway. An unfamiliar voice on the other end informed me, "I am a psychiatrist, and I haven't been able to reach you for the past 6 months. About half a year ago, a Mr. Pei gave me a large sum of money to treat your psychological condition." I walked out of the airport and stood by the bustling street. The voice continued, "Such a large sum of money truly makes me feel unworthy. Please, you must tell me where you're going so I can treat you." To be fair, he was indeed an excellent psychotherapist. Perhaps it was truly as he said. He felt uneasy about having taken too much money. He brought me to North City and provided me with long-term psychotherapy. Diligent and responsible, they inquire about my whereabouts and physical condition every day. I still often feel heartache because of the past, but at least gradually, I no longer go to rooftops, dive into deep waters, or take medicine recklessly. The northern city is just that small. I started soon after, occasionally running into Gu Nanzhao. He had grown much haggard, his eyes and brows dull with exhaustion. Though barely half a year had passed, it felt as if many, many years had gone by. Spotting me, he flusteredly chased after me from across the street. While crossing the street, I was almost hit by a car, followed by sharp honking sounds all around. He stumbled over recklessly, looking utterly disheveled. When he urgently caught up to me and looked at me, his face trembled for a long time without uttering a single word. I stared at him for a while, but when he didn't speak, I turned to leave. He suddenly asked me urgently, "Xiao Qiao, come home with your brother and have a meal, okay?" After some thought, I calmly replied, "No, I have a job onboarding appointment this afternoon." I found a job. The psychologist told me that keeping oneself busier might help alleviate some depressive symptoms. Gu Nanzhao caught up to me and asked urgently, "What about tomorrow?" I remained silent, looking at him. He finally stopped mid-sentence. After a long while, he forced out a smile that could hardly be called pleasant. "It's okay, maybe next time, alright." He knew perfectly well that I wasn't truly without time. I heard him speak again, trembling, remorseful, "I'm sorry. I couldn't take care of you properly for Mom and Dad." I whispered, "It's okay, I've been doing alright." After all this time, I can't really say I hate him that much. He's been suffering too. I know, I just don't really want to go back with him anymore. As I left, from the corner of my eye, I saw Gu Nanzhao's bloodshot eyes, then what seemed like a tear falling in an instant, and his hurriedly turned head, avoiding my gaze. I returned to my place, late at night. I suddenly received a phone call from a hospital in London. They informed me that the matching heart I had been desperately searching for, which I had previously registered there, had been found. The donor was an orphan who had received help from all sectors of society, now facing death from a car accident. They wanted to give back to society and were willing to donate their heart after passing. Coincidentally, it's a perfect match for Pei Yan's heart. I sat on the bed, gazing out at the pitch-black night. After a long silence, I hoarsely said, "Thank you, but it's no longer needed." The voice on the other end cautiously asked, "Has it already been found?" I heard rumors before that Mr. Pei found a compatible heart in Norway. It seems it's true. After a long silence, I finally just responded, "MHM." The person on the other end sincerely congratulated me. "That's wonderful news for both of you. The surgery must have gone smoothly too," I replied. "Very smoothly." They said something else with a laugh, but I didn't catch it clearly. I hung up the phone. I walked to the window and opened it. The snow lies white and heavy, weighing down the branches. The sound of snapping twigs is especially clear in the silent night. 18. Time flies. And once again it's the depths of winter. In the hazy white snow, I seemed to see that person again. My hair stuck to my face, then was blown away by the wind. He stood there in the distance, shouting to me, "Hey, Nan Xiao, we promised to live well together."